The river mist clung to the ramparts of the twins like pale cobweb, blurring torches into trembling halos and turning the dark water below into a sheet of hammered pewter. Beneath that shifting veil rode Robb Stark, king in the north, cloak sodden with dew, gray wind pacing beside his destrier in wary silence. Dawn's first hint had not yet broken, but the slow hush of a river kept rousing for a wedding stirred along the battlements. Sleepy guards changing posts, iron portcullises clanking halfway up their grooves, kitchen boys stoking fires for the dawn's bread. Every sound felt lead-heavy with portent. Robb should have been riding with lighter heart. A royal procession, a marriage feast to bind Freys and Starks once more, songs enough to make old Walder's drafty halls ring. Yet an unease gnawed him, a flicker of brushfire that would not die. Catelyn's letters spoke of indistinct whispers. Crossbow strings waxed behind shuttered faces. New riders come by night. Casks delivered into the cellars, then spirited away elsewhere. His mother's ink had cut trenches of worry across the parchment. Roose Bolton, too, had muttered of Frey men drilling at midnight under cover of fog. Bannermen whose silver flayedman badges gleamed beside twin towers had taken coin from some hidden purse. None wished to name it treachery, but beneath Robb's breastplate, his heartbeat stamped the name in iron: Red Wedding. He had marched all the same, for the north bled men daily and the next bogs grew colder with sign of winter. They needed the crossing, needed Lord Frey's levies as shield between them and Lannister teeth. Lord Frey's word was given. Yet promises from Walder Frey were as brittle as last year's reeds. The old man hid his cunning behind rheumy eyes and broken teeth, and he remembered slights with the devotion of a septon contemplating scripture. So Robb Stark arrived well before the noon sun, 3 days ahead of the feast, upon the pretext of reverence, yet truly to sniff the wind. He left most of his guard camped upriver, tents strung in neat lines, the direwolf banner planted high enough that even a sleepy crow might read its silver eyes. In his escort rode Lady Meage Mormont, dour in her mail, Edmure Tully with flowered cloak gaily bright, and Ser Brynden Blackfish in shadow-dark armor, eyes missing nothing. Robb trusted the Blackfish's instincts almost as his own, for the veteran knight read keeps like open ledgers. When they reached the spanned causeway and its portcullis rattled upward at their approach, Brynden's nostrils had flared like a hunting hound. A host greeted them. Ser Ryman Frey, the heir, jowls shaved and quivering. A tale of Frey cousins in watered silk, and Walder's young wife, rosy cheeks powder pale with the chill. Beyond them, on a carved oak chair carried by 4 brawny grandsons, slouched Lord Walder himself, bones wrapped in tired velvet. He forced a smile, brittle as thin ice, and croaked welcome with a voice like thaw water trickling through gravel. Robb bowed, gray eyes level, and spoke courtesy. Yet even courtesy trembled upon a knife edge. That night, he walked the galleries above the great hall alone, gray wind padding silent at his heel. Harpists practiced love ballads below. The thin strings plucked out notes like rain upon plate. Servants unfurled wine-red rugs that would soon be ruinous with spilled ale. But between rug and torchlight Robb saw dark stains already crusted into the flagstones. Battles fought long before his time, Frey blood spilled by Frey knives when inheritance feuds turned brother upon brother. The dire wolf halted before a tapestry whose threads showed trident blue and the hoisted trout of Riverrun. Gray wind growled, hackles bristling. Robb's palm found the wolf's neck, but the snarl did not still. From shadows ahead drifted 2 shapes, Ser Ryman and a lesser Frey, the one called Ser Aelsander of the Gatehouse. They were bent close, voices hushed, yet what they hissed reached Robb's ears. Daggers beneath seat cushions. At the feast itself, when the betting begins, we strike. Lord Walder wants the pup's head upon the trestle before the second verse of "The Queen took off her sandal." And the mother? Aelsander's whisper. Bolton's men see to the wench, blade across the windpipe and toss her in the river. Walder says the trout will feast. The torch crackled. Ser Ryman's eyes darted upward. Too late. Robb sprang from darkness like the stormcat upon Pike's cliffs. Gray wind seized Ryman's sword arm. Teeth crushed through mail and muffled bone. Robb's own blade, King's justice, gleamed a handspan from Ailsander's throat. "All the gods hear you," Robb said, voice iron-soft. "And now the king in the north does too." The lesser Frey sank to knees, lips flapping soundless. Ser Ryman groaned beneath grey wind's maw. Blood-spattered gold brocade. Robb pressed the point until a pearl of scarlet welled upon Ailsander's Adam's apple. "Speak," he demanded. "Who else turns traitor?" "To there are letters," Ailsander wheezed. "Sealed with twins, sent south." "To whom?" "To Lord Tywin, and another to Roose Bolton. 7 save me, I know not more." Robb's pulse drummed. Bolton. Roose had looked a carrion crow these past weeks, but he had pledged fealty, marched true in battle. Had he sold them now? The thought stabbed colder than northern winter. He ordered Ryman gagged, Ailsander bound. Meage Mormont hauled them away beneath grey-faced guards. Robb stalked the silent corridors toward the rookery. The Blackfish met him upon a stair, sword half-drawn at the sight of blood on his king's gauntlet. Robb told him in few clipped words. Bryndon's expression hardened to granite. "Proof," he said. "We need proof before we strike at the Lord of the Crossing. Frey treachery will rouse the Riverlands to our banner if we brandish their poison. But we must brandish certainty." "Then we taste their wine," Robb answered, "and scrape the casks for venom." They climbed the rookery. Ravens shuffled on perches. Old Tom, the white-bearded maester, blinked owlishly as Robb demanded parchment of every letter flown these moon turns. Tom stammered that Lord Walder kept private ravens beyond the maester's care, caged in the East Tower where only his sons dared tread. Yet Tom yielded an inventory. Dates noted, flight routes scrawled. Several ravens had flown to the Dreadfort, 2 to Casterly Rock under darkness. Dates aligned with Ryman's whispers. Armed with ledger and traders in irons, Robb convened war council at the hour before sunrise. Meage Mormont, Blackfish Edmure, and tall Great John Umber, eyes bloodshot yet spirits fierce, gathered round a narrow hearth in the guest tower. The Frey walls around them seemed suddenly to lean inward, treachery woven into the mortar. The Blackfish laid out a swift plan, watchers at every stairwell. River chain cut so no signal fires could call Frey levies. Crossbowmen of Karstark blood atop the eastern barbican, and above all secrecy. "We arrest Walder Frey after dusk," Bryndon said. "Drag him before his own small folk and lay bare his poison letters. Then let the twins decide which lord they would serve, your grace or Tywin Lannister." Great John thumped the table. "Hang the old goat at dawn, and the towers are ours before the porridge cools." But Caitlin, summoned by swift rider from camp, spoke calm into the clamor. "There are still children within these walls," she reminded them. "Frey girls wed but a fortnight past, wet nurses, stable lads. If we turn the twins into a slaughter yard, we become the very monster songs we'll remember." Robb met his mother's eyes. "No songs, then, only justice." Thus the day unfolded with a veneer of normalcy. Robb greeted Frey daughters with courteous smile, inspected rations with Lord Walder's steward, and oversaw archery contests in the lower yard. Yet each arrow loosed by a Stark archer served dual purpose. Skill practice and subtle message that northern fletching now ringed every parapet. Meanwhile, Bryndon's scouts ghosted through storerooms, sniffing for casks not on any victualler's ledger. They found 3 thick oak stoppers, no vintner's mark. Within sloshed a deep red that smelled of figs and almonds, sweet to mask bitter. Maester Tom dribbled but a drop upon a silver spoon and fed it to a cage raven. Within heartbeats the bird thrashed and lay still. Proof enough. At sunset the twins blushed crimson, but it was a beauty marred by storm clouds bruising the western sky. Robb donned his king's cloak, wolf pelt across shoulders, crown of bronze and iron upon his brow. He walked the very corridor where he had overheard betrayal. Each torch now guttered low, as if the keep itself sensed what approached. Grey wind padded silent. Inside the great hall, Walder Frey presided over a high table heaped with roast fowl and spun sugar cakes shaped like towers. Lords from weary houses sat ordered little differently than chess pieces. Bolton pale beside Frey plump, Malister lean opposite Piper Stout. Even Roose Bolton raised a cup in toast. His pale eyes flicked to Robb's approaching figure with unreadable calm. Had Roose known his letters were seen? Did snakes ever fear gardens? Robb took his place. Music swelled. Flutes and dulcimers weaving light-hearted tune at odds with tension pooling round trestles. Lady Rosslyn, Edmure's bride, pale and trembling in dove-gray silk, gazed at her father with eyes like bruised moons. She knew, by some quiet corridor gossip, she had learned of knives being sharpened. Robb marked that fear, steeled him. He rose after the third course, fork stilled. Torchlight danced upon his crown as he let eyes sweep the hall. Words thronged behind his teeth. He chose the simplest. "Lord Walder," he began, voice ringing. "I am your guest, pledged safe beneath your roof. So am I your son by your own terms, though I sinned in wedding for love. You forgave me, so you said. Yet within these walls your sons plot my death, brewing poison and summoning ravens to foes who would flay the Northman and mount his head on gates." A hush sucked breath from the room. Walder Frey's mouth sagged, then firmed into rictus grin. "Bold accusation, boy king." Robb lifted a hand. Guards dragged forth Ser Ryman and Ser Ailsander, chains clanking. Blood stained Ryman's sleeve where grey wind had savaged him. Robb's soldiers laid out Raven's ledger, poison casks, the dead black bird still limp. Maester Tom, trembling, spoke of hidden letters in East Tower. Murmurs rippled. Walder's many bastards shifted. The Frey daughters looked to husbands in alarm. Lord Walder tapped gnarled fingers upon table. "Lies spun by a pup afraid of shadows," he croaked. Roose Bolton rose, pale as milk glass. "Is it lie, my lord, that ravens flew to the Dreadfort?" His voice slid like oil. "I received none. If some soul forged my name in letter, he'll hang for it." Robb watched him carefully. Bolton's face betrayed nothing. Fate, perhaps, would later define this hour as Bolton's last chance for loyalty. For now, he stepped aside, hands empty of daggers. Walder Frey attempted to stand. His skinny legs trembled. "I am lord here. I will not be put to question by green wolf whelps." Grey Wind's snarl cut him short. The dire wolf leaped to dais, jaws inches from old man's throat. Cries rang. Crossbows clattered from Frey hands as Stark archers drew strings first. In the tension of bow would groaned a judgment older than crowns. Robb said, "Lord Walder, by right as guest you have broken sacred law. By right as king I pronounce you traitor. Surrender and you shall stand trial in Riverrun before the lords of the Trident. Resist, and your life ends here." The ancient lord looked out upon spears and sudden fear among his bloodline. He saw no rescue. With a hiss between teeth, he sank back onto his throne. "Trial, then," he spat. "But you will find no gallant songs waiting, Stark. The river remembers insults. So it will remember justice," Robb replied. He signaled. Frey guards were relieved by Stark, Umber, and Mormont steel. Poison casks were smashed, the sweet reek of figs flooding flagstones. Walder Frey was carried to a cell meant for goats, his velvet trailing like shed skin. That night thunder broke above the twins, rolling across wetlands like war drums. Rain crashed upon slate roofs, dripped through arrow slits, washed poison from wine-strewn floors. Robb stood in the courtyard void of torches, face upturned, letting cold water scour blood stick from his gauntlets. Somewhere beyond the rain, he heard the distant howl of a direwolf carried on storm wind, the cry of the north, of something old as the world stirring in answer. His course was set now. No capitulation, no apology. The Kingslayer still rode free, Tywin still gathered coin and steel, yet the Riverlands would witness that treachery's toll was paid in full at the Twins. But dawn brought darker reckonings. Scouts rode in breathless. Forces from the south, 1,000 men under Ser Davin Lannister, were rumored crossing the Red Fork. Worse, Walder's second son, Ser Perwyn, had fled the keep in night with 200 riders and might rouse lands still loyal to Frey Gold. Riverrun besieged, Harrenhal occupied anew by Gregor Clegane, and the Vale's knights unmoved by war. The the game shifted again. Robb convened council in the old sept of the twins, the only chamber Walder had never defiled with licentious jest. Stained glass panes flickered with broken rainlight across mossy stone. There, maps sprawled, inks pooled, and tempers sparked. Meej Mormont urged swift striking south to smash Davin's host before they could link with Frey deserters. Great John roared for turning east to relieve Riverrun. Edmure, face pale with newly wedded guilt, pledged Tully men for either cause if they could only spare Riverrun's walls. Robb listened, weighed, and felt the burden settle like mail drenched in rain. Execute Walder Frey, and river lords might flock to his banner, but kill him wrongly, and whispers of kinslayer would follow. Spare him, and every Frey still breathing would scheme anew. Justice had to be seen, not only done. In mid-council, a raven fluttered through broken glass. The scroll bore a pale pink seal, a flayed man, Roose Bolton's mark. Robb cracked the wax. The words within flowed like ice melt. Net, your grace, let be no doubt of our fealty. Treachery at the twins would have claimed us as well. We ride now to Barrowton to secure grain for winter. Should the king wish our sword, light the beacons. Bolton had gone. Whether loyalty or cunning guided him, the letter did not say. Robb clenched fist round parchment until drops of rain blurred ink. Decision formed. He turned to his lords. We march east, he decreed. The Freys will stand trial at Riverrun in sight of every banner of the Trident. Let Lord Hoster's halls bear witness, and let news ride the King's Road that the North wages war with justice. Great John, take half our strength, intercept Ser Davin before he bridges the Red Fork. Meej, hold the twins. No Frey is to flee nor harm child nor small folk. Brynden rides with me, Edmure beside him. Commands sealed, torches lit with purpose. Soldiers rolled drenched banners, strapped breastplates, belted blades. Rain tapered to drizzle as storm moved north, and the smell of wet earth rose like hope. Atop the highest tower, Robb paused beside Walder's goat cell. He peered through iron bars at the lord draped in threadbare blanket. Walder's eyes, still bright with cunning, narrowed. You think yourself just boy, the old man rasped. But in the end, we all feast at traitors' tables. Some choke on bones sooner than others. Robb said only, keep faith, and you may live to see summer. He left without waiting for reply. Below, gray wind bounded down stairwells, a gray shadow of vengeance. Together they emerged into dawn where banners unfurled. Direwolf, trout, bear, sunburst of Karstark, and mailed fist of Umber. Trumpets called, hooves splashed mud, and as the columns snaked eastward, the twins sat sullen and dripping, its towers stripped of swords, its lord shackled, its secrets laid bare beneath northern sky. So began the longer war, a war redrawn by one overheard whisper, by a direwolf's growl in gallery gloom. History would judge whether Robb Stark's justice forged peace or merely sharpened every blade. But for now, on mist-wreathed roads of the Riverlands, a young king rode with storm winds at his back, bearing the weight of Wolf's honor and the fragile hope that justice, once claimed, might yet lead him home. The Riverlands woke to pale dawn mist, but Robb Stark's column had already broken camp, standards rippling damp above churned earth. Gray wind trotted ahead, muzzle streaked with last night's rain, scouting every hedgerow. The road east toward Riverrun threaded low ridges tufted with alder and willow, flanking fields left fallow by a war that had taught peasants to flee before iron-shod hooves. Robb rode at the fore beside the Blackfish and Lady Meej, mail coats gleaming with dew. Behind them Edmure's trout banner hovered like a bloody comet. No song accompanied the march, only the monotone thud of hooves and the creak of wagon axles bearing Frey prisoners bound in iron. Somewhere among those carts Walder Frey hissed curses into the straw, but the rattling chains drowned him. Robb had issued strict orders. No jesting at Walder's expense, no spitting on Frey coifs, no small revenge taken in passing. Justice must march uncluttered by pettiness. Even Great John held tongue, though his glower could have shattered helm steel. Every mile carried whispers of Lannister riders glimpsed south of the Green Fork. Each hedge, each copse, might screen crossbows bought with Casterly gold. Scouts went out in pairs and returned with terse reports. Fields empty, villages shuttered. One child found hanging from a charred oak with a crust of bread still clutched in tiny fist. Riverland's mercy at work. By midday they reached the ruined Sept of Fair Market. Walls blackened, bell cracked on flagstones. Robb called halt. Caitlin dismounted stiff-hipped, eyes sweeping nave like a silent prayer. She found an intact corner of altar stone and placed 3 candles. One for Ned, one for Robb's unknown fate, one for the dead who had never been granted candles at all. The flame trembled in the draught but stood. When she looked up, she found Roose Bolton's Squire Vargo seated among the wounded, face blotched with fatigue. The Bolton host, he said, had swung north indeed, but rumor swore they doubled back after 3 days, skirting marsh paths too thick for heavy horse. Their destination now whispered as Harrenhal. Caitlin carried that tale to Robb as he walked gray-wined along the riverbank, letting the wolf lap at currents swift and cold. Robb listened, face shaded by the hood of his travel cloak. If Roose means betrayal, he will strike where our sinew is softest. Riverrun's walls, perhaps, or Winterfell behind us. His voice remained steady, but gray wind raised head, hackles pricking, as if the words themselves scented of treachery. They resumed march beneath cloud-massed afternoon, light leaking through in pewter shafts. By twilight they entered the lands of House Vance, where roads grew firmer and hedgerows better tended. A rider met them on the track, Ser Patrek Mallister in mud-spattered cloak, helm under arm. "Your Grace," Ser Patrek called. "I ride from the Mummersford." Lannister van sighted 12 leagues south, 1,000 spears with siege wagons. Grachan's outriders pinned their scouts by the hedges of Maidenpool Turn. "The Lion knows you ride." Robb nodded once. "And I know the Lion tests our flank ban. King on Frey treachery behind. Yet the Lion now chases ghosts. You did well." They encamped near a half-ruined mill, wheatstones blackened by wildfire lit 2 summers before. Sentries ringed the camp. Inside, the war council gathered round a makeshift map weighted by broken millstones. Lit by guttering tallow, Edmure traced Davin Lannister's probable approach. Up the Tumblestone, then angled northeast to join whatever Freys escaped the twins. Greatjon proposed riding hard with umber axes that very night, smashing the Lion's van before dawn. Brynden countered that Davin's host would scatter and reform behind every hedgerow. Better to bait the lions toward Riverrun's walls and break them against stone and river. In the flicker, Robb's shadow stretched across the parchment. Davin seeks swift victory, he reasoned. He has siege towers but carries them light. He means to catch Riverrun unprepared. Yet we hold Walder's life. The Freys will not ride openly while their lord rots in irons. Without their river crossing, the lions must row siege towers piece by piece or march days south to find a ford. We let them bleed patience dry. Grachan's laugh rumbled. Patient lions starve. Another candle sputtered out. Rain pattered on canvas. Robb dismissed counsel. He sought his tent but sleep eluded. Instead he walked perimeter, cloak pulled tight. In the dark he met Ser Brynden again, helm slung from gauntlet fist. The Blackfish looked at the king's lined brow and spoke soft. "Your father taught me the game of stones. Move too boldly too soon, you reveal the river you mean to dam. Yet wait too long, current sweeps the board. Walder is a stone. Bolton is a stone. Which dams the stronger flow?" Robb answered with a gaze at the restless dark. "Only the morrows know. Yet I cannot turn back to guard against Bolton shadows while lions bare teeth ahead." The wind carried the smell of wet bark and distant wood smoke. "If Roose breaks faith, he shall find Winterfell risen behind him. Bran and Rickon live, Theon be damned. The North remembers." Brynden inclined head, a soldier's promise. They parted into night's hush. Morning churned pale and listless when horns blared from east. Gray winds howl sliced tents before men woke fully. Robb snapped sword free, spilled from pavilion. Across dewy meadow charged riders, Blackwood outriders, ravens on gray cloaks. Their captain skidded mud before the king, panting. "River ahead, sire," Davin Lannister's van just crested Stone Hedge Rise. They will north as though scenting blood. Scouts say golden lions on Crimson Stream in their banners. At least 1,000 pikes. No siege wagons in sight, left behind to gain speed. Robb's throat tightened. Brynden muttered. They expect the twins to still be theirs. They ride to rescue Walder and claim hostage in one stroke. Robb issued crisp commands. Umber vanguard forward to screen, Mal Lister archers on the ridge, Mormont shield wall bracing road choke. He kept Edmure and his small Tully band in reserve guarding the prison wagons. The Frey captives, hearing horns, rattled chains. Walder's voice screeched through canvas like a marsh bird caught in snare. A sunless forenoon saw lions and wolves clash upon a rolling meadow striped by streams. Great John led the first charge, long axe whirling, his war cry louder than the war horn itself. Lannister pikes braced, but Umber fury broke them as a hammer breaks glass. Robb, helm crowned with direwolf crest, swept flanks with Karstark riders, steel flashing, gray wind a streak of death among warhorses. Twice Robb's line bent. Twice he rode where spearmen faltered, turning blades by sheer presence. Arrows hissed from Mal Lister U-bows, deleting gaps before they could widen. At midday a horn moaned retreat. Davin Lannister, helm plume slashed, wheeled his charger amid half-crushed bannermen and fled south along the Tumblestone with perhaps 600 from an onset of 1,000. Robb forbade pursuit past hedge rose heavy with mistletoe. His men were winded, horses lathered. Victory tasted of iron and mud. He rode field's length, accepting cheers with muted nod. Dead lay thick, lion sigils tangled with umber fists, Mormont bears crushed beneath shattered shields. He found Lady Meege kneeling over her niece Alice's still form, arrow protruding throat. The Mormont matron's face ached but tears refused her. Robb knelt, placed gauntlet on her shoulder. She died shield wall strong, he murmured. Meege stood stiff. The bear does not mourn until winter ends, she said and strode to rally survivors. Even victory carved flesh. They burned the dead as dusk bled purple. Smoke pillars climbed into sky already bruising toward storm again. Maester Tom moved among wounded, but supplies ran thin. Catelyn organized search for herbs in hedgerow. Edmure redistributed wine stores to dull pain. Walder Frey listened to these travails from Cart Prison, eyes bright with a satisfaction he dare not voice. Robb ordered his gag replaced. Night and Robb sat alone by cookfire dwindling to embers, polishing sword edge with oiled rag. The blade's reflection showed lines across his cheeks he did not recall possessing weeks before. Catelyn approached, the token candles from Mill now burned away. "You saved Riverrun by breaking Davin," she whispered, voice taut with relief and worry entwined. "Yet winter deepens. You cannot hold every field between here and Harrenhal. The fight narrows to castles, and those walls breed siege, disease, famine." He sheathed steel. "Then I finish what father began. End this war before snow closes passes." His gaze lifted to Carcosa of stars between ragged clouds. "Walder's trial must rally riverlords. From strength united we strike at Harrenhal, break whatever nest Bolton weaves. Then south, into heart of lion while it licks wounds." He exhaled mist. "Or die in attempt." She touched his arm, mother's warmth through mail. "Do not die, Robb. Too much blood stains these stones already." 3 dawns later Riverrun's red-blue towers rose beyond the Tumblestone, banners limp in chill breeze. The castle showed scars of siege, scorched crenels, a gatehouse missing portcullis teeth, but stood unbroken beneath the trout and direwolf flying as one. Trumpets heralded Robb's return. Riverlords rode out in ragged but eager column. Lord Jason Mallister with arm in sling, Ser Mark Piper singing ribald tune, Lady Brienne side by side with Ser Desmond Grell. Small folk peered from reed huts, murmuring of a Frey lord in chains. Inside Riverrun's great hall, black drapes covered high windows cracked by catapult stones. Yet fireplace roared as though winter already gnawed the walls. Walder Frey, wrists iron-bitten, was dragged before assembled lords of river and north. Caitlin presided robed in stark gray and tully blue, Edmure to her right, Brynden to her left. Robb stood below dais, crown absent. This was not king's justice alone, but trial by peers. A hush fell heavier than stone as charges unfurled. Attempted guest right violation, communication with enemy, conspiring to murder the king in the north, forging Bolton's seal. Maester Tom produced the poison cask's remnants, Raven's ledgers, Ryman's confession scraped from throat still bandaged. Walder responded with wheezy denials, claiming sons had acted without leave, letters forged by unknown hands, poison intended only for rats. His words slithered yet found no purchase. Riverlords had buried daughters wedded to Freys, then sent home by Walder for being too loud at table. They had long memories. The Blackfish called witness after witness. Kitchen boys who saw crossbows smuggled, stable hands who overheard Ryman's boasts, guards who intercepted riders bound for Casterly Rock. Each testimony hammered nails into Walder's brittle defiance. At length the old man sagged, sweat slick on parchment skin, mouth working but no sound emerging. Silence swallowed him. Only fire crackled. Robb stepped forward. Voice clear, he declared, "Walder Frey, you break sacred oaths and stain guest right. The lords assembled find you guilty. Sentence will be carried at dawn." Murmurs flowed like tide against quay, some calling for hanging, others for a head on spike fed to crows. Robb raised hand. "Blood begs blood, but we serve realm. The ancient laws of Riverlands decree a traitor of highest birth may seek trial by combat." Gasps rippled. Walder's rheumy gaze flicked hopeful, but Robb continued. "If such be his wish, he may name a champion of kin. Failing that, he dies without blade drawn." He paused. "Do you invoke this right, Lord Walder?" Silence, then a crooked grin. "Aye," he croaked. "My grandson Black Walder stands in my stead. Let the green wolf meet a Frey who cannot be cowed." Black Walder stepped forward, tall, grim of eye, hair like steel shavings. He unsheathed longsword, blade chipped from campaign up the green fork. Across hall Great John barked laughter, volunteering on spot, but Robb shook head. "I name myself," he declared. Caitlin's breath caught. Brynden's lips thinned. Yet none could gainsay the king's right. The hall emptied whispering. Night weighed heavy. In a quiet solar Robb oiled his blade while Caitlin paced. "Another could fight," she urged. "Ser Brynden, Ser Wendell Manderley, Brienne of Tarth. You need not dance with Frey steel." Robb's smile held sorrow. "If I shrink now, every banner may question strength. I'll end this with my own hand, as father would." He tightened gauntlet straps. Later he walked battlements alone, gray wind at heel. Moonlight silvered river where catfish broke surface with lazy plop. Far below torches dotted camps. Riverlords and Northmen intermingled. Somewhere Edmure rehearsed wedding vows to Roslyn he had spoken sincerely though rushed. Now his bride's father stood condemned. War could twist any knot. Robb looked north across darkness. Somewhere beyond, Winterfell's broken towers waited, stories of burnt stone drifting like smoke into black. He felt them, an ache behind ribs. Bring war south, he thought, finish, then go home. The world should turn, summer should come, Bran should laugh atop rebuilt walls. Tomorrow's duel would carve a path toward that dawn, or sever it completely. Dawn bled pearl across sky. Courtyard thrummed with hush of anticipation. Lords circled rope boundary. Small folk perched on parapets. Ravens settled on chimneys as though drawn to omen. Black Walder entered first, mail gleaming beneath surcoat of twin towers. He swung blade in lazy arcs, face unreadable stone. Robb arrived in simple breastplate of blackened steel, direwolf embossed silver across heart.
"No crown."
He touched Grey Wind's muzzle, whispered, "Guard mother," and Wolf loped to Caitlin's side. Maester Tom intoned rites. Steel sang as both fighters saluted. On command they closed. Black Walder feinted high, thrust low. Robb parried, riposte slicing pauldron leather. Clash echoed off walls. Walder pressed, raining blows like sleet. Overhead cuts, quick stabs, knee aimed at groin. Robb gave ground, feeling weight of each strike through arm bones. Yet footwork saved him. Eddard's lessons in Winterfell Yard, Ser Roderick's voice admonishing calm. He circled, letting Frey overextend, then clipped calf with earnest slash. Blood spotted dust. Cheers rose. Walder snarled, launched furious whirlwind. Edge grazed Robb's brow. Warm line trickled down temple. He tasted copper. Memory flashed of Bran tumbling from tower, of Ned's head on spike, of Grey Wind's howl in Crannogman Mire. Rage steadied him like stone bedrock. He caught incoming blow on crossguard, shoved, pivoted, hammered pommel into Frey jaw. Walder staggered. Time slowed. Robb drove forward, sword sweeping in singing arc that bit through hauberk gaps, severing collarbone. Walder's blade slipped from limp fingers. He collapsed to knees, eyes wide with shock, blood bubbling at lip. Robb placed point at throat. Breath steaming, he waited one heartbeat, then drove steel home. Silence, then roar. Frey retainers sagged. Riverlords cheered raw. Walder Frey watched grandson die, his own face twisted in grotesque despair. Catelyn's shoulders dropped in relief. Grey Wind howled triumph to morning sky. The king wiped blade upon cloth, turned to gathered host. Voice carried, "Let the realm see treachery answered by measured justice." Walder Frey forfeits lands and titles. The twins pass to Lady Rosslyn, wed to Edmure Tully, binding Tower and Trout in blood sealed by honor. He faced Walder. "You will live your remaining days in silent cloister at the September of the Three Sisters, tongue removed, so never again may your words so ruin." Gasps. The sentence harsher than death, some whispered. Yet Robb's gaze remained iron. By noon Walder was shipped upriver, tongue soon to meet knife. Rosslyn wept but understood. Edmure held her hand atop barge deck, promising kindness. The twins now lay under regency of Blackfish until Rosslyn's coming child, if any, reached age of rule. 2 days celebration followed, mingled with funeral pyres for the fallen. Ale flowed, songs rose, yet Robb allowed himself only one cup. War waited beyond walls. Ravens brought news. Roose Bolton had indeed seized Harrenhal, flaying seasoned garrison left by Gregor Clegane, who rode west to rally at Lannisport. Worse, Queen Cersei secured a new pact with the Dornish Prince Doran. Myrcella betrothed to Trystane still, but shipping lanes open for lion grain. Robb gathered counsel beneath Riverrun's Godswood, oak's red leaves trembling above heart tree scar. Strategy sprawled across parchment. Options crept like vines. Strike Harrenhal, march to King's Landing while Lion wounded, secure support from Stormlanders restless under Joffrey's caprice, summon Ironborn who chafed at Euron's rule. Each path thorned. Night deep, Robb wandered battlements once more. Moon faced river's sheen. Footsteps approached. Ser Jaime Lannister escorted under guard, golden hair dulled by grime, still prisoner since whisper of exchange for Sansa and Arya had faltered. He studied Robb with curious tilt. A king who spares a villain and hacks off his tongue. Imaginative, Jaime drawled. Yet your mercy may sharpen Frey daggers for generations. Robb replied quietly, "Mercy is not weakness. It is a whetstone for conscience." Jaime chuckled. "Conscience seldom holds castle walls, Stark." Robb turned. "Neither does arrogance, Kingslayer. Would you see which lasts longer?" Guard prodded Jaime back to cell. Robb inhaled river air. Below, Grey Wind paced, restless, ears twitching toward east as if hearing drums none yet sensed. Distant thunder rumbled. Or was it hoofbeat echo? War's next verse clearing throat. At dawn council reconvened. Plan crystallized. Leave sufficient garrison at Riverrun under Brynden. March main host southeast to Harrenhal before Bolton could reinforce. Message sent to Storm's End appealing to Lord Renly's former bannermen, promising restitution of lands if they rose now. Another raven flew north. Call for Karstarks, Glovers, Manderleys to muster at Moat Cailin, then push south along King's Road, sealing Bolton's retreat. Catelyn kissed her son's cheek before gates. "Bring winter's honor to Harrenhal," she said. Robb smiled weary. "And bring spring home." He rode out at Column's Head, gray wind loping, banners snapping crisp. Behind marched 10,000 hearts hammered by grief, tempered by justice. Over their shoulders lay the twins freed from treachery, river unsecured, a Frey tongue soon to rust beside monastic candles. Ahead waited the haunted towers of Harrenhal and the pale flayed banners fluttering like skinned ghosts. Somewhere south a lion king plotted, a queen sharpened ploys, a dwarf balanced realm on quip and quicksand. And beyond all, white winds skirted Wall's ragged crest, carrying the scent of things older and colder than any king. But for this breath, this beating moment, Robb Stark rode beneath cloudy sun, sword bright, conscience keened, a young wolf who had stared treachery eye to eye and answered with measured steel. Whether the realm would remember justice or only blood, history would decide. The road stretched east, long, uncertain, beckoning. He urged his charger into trotting rhythm, and the army followed, a living river of iron flowing toward the next bend where destiny waited, silent as a frozen pool before stones break its skin. The road that wound southeast toward Harrenhal cut through lands too long abandoned to war. Meres spread on either side, mirror-flat ponds where long-dead trees jutted like skeletal fingers, their bark scabbed with moss the color of old brews. Rain had stopped 2 days past, yet the air remained sodden, every breath tinged with decay of rotting rushes. As Robb's host pressed on, wagons lurched along causeways laid by undulls 1,000 years gone, stone slabs half-sunken, their seams erupting with reeds. Hoofbeats echoed hollow against the water, sounding like drums from beneath the earth. At dusk they reached the Isle of Faces ferry. The ferrymen, a hunched knot of small folk under patched cloaks, peered wide-eyed at the banners, direwolf rampant beside black trout, bear, mailed fist, sunburst. One old man knelt unbidden, pressing mud-slick forehead to the plank pier. "We feared the flayed men," he rasped. "They rode this way 3 nights back, torches bright red, like ghosts dragging hellfire." Lady Meege dismounted, towering. "How many?" The ferryman shook, beard dripping. 70, maybe more. They carried chains and cages. Took 4 lads from the mill settlement and 2 girls. Said the dread fort hungered. Robb's jaw set. The wind picked up off the god's eye, rippling its vast surface into molten pewter. He laid hand upon the ferryman's shoulder. "Those riders will not return, nor anyone else bearing the flayed man. Spread word that the king in the north marches." He pressed a silver stag into the man's cracked palm. The coin was worth more than the ferry, yet the gesture felt hollow against the image of children dragged screaming. They crossed by torchlight, barges swaying beneath horses nervous of water, wagons groaning. In mid-passage, gray wind raised head, ears pricked toward the far bank. At that same instant trumpets blared from rear guard, distant but clear. A rumble followed like rolling boulders. Robb pivoted, scanning darkness. Over the marsh rose flickers of flame, multiple points, fanning wide along the road just traveled. Lannister outriders? No, too small for spears. More like scouting party with torches testing distance. Ser Patrek Mal Lister cantered to the king as the barge bumped eastern dock. Rear scouts sight horsemen, a dozen only, colors unclear. They keep their distance but dog our step. They hunt proof we still march, Robb replied. Feed them illusions. He dispatched a wedge of Karstark riders under banners altered with false sigils, one bearing a flayed man sewn upside down, another a stag crowned in gold. Let the watchers puzzle themselves silly. War was as much confusion as steel. Night encampments stood on a rise ringed by willow. Cookfires burned low, shielded from prying eyes. Robb convened council inside a war tent whose canvas still carried the cloying scent of spun sugar, cakes once stored within. Catelyn sat with Ledger. Edmure dozed upright, face drawn. Roslyn nested near but silent. Brynden spread new parchments. Charcoal sketches of Harrenhal's sprawl. 5 immense towers jutting like broken teeth around smoky courtyard. The Blackfish's scouts reported Roose Bolton held 3 widows, owls, and Kingspire, leaving Wailing Tower vacant but rigged with pit traps and murder holes. Great John jabbed a sausage-greased finger on the map. 1 tower or 5, the walls are crumbling. Stone dragons breathe dust, not flame.
Isa.
Why storm at dawn? Sir Mark Piper shook head. Crumbling walls can kill as quick as stout ones. Rubble rains on men beneath. Better starve him out. Cut the roads, deny river access. But winter creeps, Meej growled. Starvation cuts us too if we sit. Robb listened, hands palm down on table edge. Candlelight caught the drying scab along his brow from Black Walder's blade. Pain ghosted there, a reminder of cost. When arguments wound down, he spoke. We cannot gift Bolton weeks. Every day he holds Harrenhal, he sends ravens south. Lies telling I died at the Twins, or that I feed on Frey blood, or whatever fable suits him. Lannisters will seize the tale. We strike, but not by brute ladder. We pry his own gates wide. How? Great John asked, brow quizzical. Robb reached for a small carved direwolf among his tokens. The Night's Watch teaches, the gate is manned by men. Make the man open the gate. He set the direwolf beside the main barbican mark. Scouts confirm small folk still toil in Harrenhal's fields under Bolton lash. They slip in and out, fetching water, tending stew pits. We fold among them. Ser Brynden eyed him, expression sharpening. A handful of riders disguised. A dozen, Robb agreed, led by me. Murmurs erupted. He stilled them with lifted palm. I ride in nondescript cloak, with gray wind kept beyond walls until confusion breaks. We approach a side sally port at dawn disguised as charcoal traders. Once inside, we seize gate pulleys while Blackfish's archers on rafts slip up the lake channel and light Bolton's grain stores. Smoke rises, alarm bells ring, vantage divides. Grachan's axes crash the main causeway as portcullis lifts. Chaos becomes ladder. Caitlyn's knuckles whitened on ledger. Too great a risk. Lose you inside. Our host is a sword without point. The realm already decided risk when my father's head fell, Robb said soft. Boldness saved us at the Twins. It will again. Debate spiraled, but Sunrise found plan sealed. Meej argued to join infiltration. Robb insisted she command main body with Karstarks since their Lord Ricard languished still in northern frost. She conceded with grudging nod. Brynden demanded to lead the covert group. Robb allowed joint command. Caitlyn retired to her tent where, rumor said, she wept upon old leathers Eddard once wore. Before false dawn they moved. 12 riders draped in soot-streaked cloaks. Pack mules loaded with sacks of charcoal charred by night fire to lend authenticity. Robb ditched his breastplate for boiled leather scored with years, hair unbound about shoulders. Steel remained, hidden in saddlebag, dagger tucked into boot. Beside him, Brynden wore the garb of a fishmonger, smelling truly of carp courtesy of a satchel of guts gathered from last night's supper. 3 Mormont women, faces blackened with ash, managed reins of mules. 2 Karstark lads carried a broken wheelbarrow spare piece to complete the guise. Gray wind they left tethered to a hidden birch thicket half a league off. Wolf eyes glimmered gold in gloom, but Robb commanded stay. The howl that followed as they rode away felt like sky itself tearing. Low fog wreathed the mile-long approach to Harrenhal. Dawn rose bloodless behind banks of cloud. Towers cut silhouettes jagged against it, like knives stuck in corpse earth. The castle's stink reached them first. A stew of tanneries, forge smoke, neglected ditches clogged with offal. At the outer hamlet, half-derelict huts sagged. Slaves in tattered cloaks hauled donkey carts of peat under the watch of Bolton men whose pink cloaks looked unnaturally bright amid sludge. One guard hailed them lazily. "Charcoal?" he barked, voice brash. "Lord Bolton demands half-tithe." Brynden feigned rural accent. "Half-o'-nothing, M-Lord. Since Lannister lot burnt our shoreline stands last moon. We carried what little's left." He opened a sack, fine black lumps puffing soot into guards' eyelashes. The man cursed, waving them through. Within courtyard they queued with others. Potters with cracked kills, pig herds, 2 septa bearing cloth bandages. Robb kept hood low, eyes scanning constant. Above, Widow's Tower windows glowed faintly, morning candles. Rumor said Roos kept quarters high to watch for carrion crows. At Barbican Archway, a portly sergeant tallied entries. Robb's turn came. The sergeant tugged Robb's hood. Face up. Robb obeyed, presenting the weary traitor. The man's eyes narrowed on fresh scab above brow. Fall from cart. Bar brawl, Robb murmured. Cask to face. The sergeant grunted, marking ledger. Gate tithe 2 groats. Brinden produced coin, copper clinking. They passed into the belly of ruin. Harrenhal's inner yard sprawled like a graveyard of giants. Blackened walls melted by dragonfire centuries past, iron gargoyles dribbling rust tears. Lines of small folk stirred cauldrons under watch. Across yard a gallows stood with 3 shapes swaying. Small folk executed at dawn shift for petty theft. Their feet brushed ash-covered ground like pendulums of dread. Robb felt each pendulum swing in his marrow. He forced gate steady as they veered toward a low granary abutting Kingspire, target of later torch. 2 guards lounged there. Inside the granary's deep shadow they stowed charcoal sacks. Beneath them a trapdoor hidden behind rotten boards led to Old Oubliette, where scouts last week found passage to Gatehouse. Brinden pried board, revealed black aperture exhaling mold. Karstark lads slipped first, descending rusted iron rungs. Mormont women next. Last, Robb and Blackfish. Passage reeked of damp and rat musk, walls oozing. The glow from Brinden's shuttered lantern painted rivulets down stone. They advanced hunched, boots sloshing in ankle-deep slime. After 50 paces, tunnel forked. Left path collapsed under centuries. Right climbed gradual to wooden grate of gatehouse storage room. Through slats they glimpsed crates of corals, barrels of pitch, racks of grappling lines. 2 Bolton crossbowmen lounged on stools playing dice, helms off. Robb mouthed count. 1, 2, 3, and heaved great. The board screeched. Dice men jerked. In same heartbeat Brinden leapt, pommel smashing temple of first before cry loosed. Robb's dagger pierced second's throat clean. Blood spurted dark onto straw. He lowered corpse gently. Something in him settled ice cold. No time for rattled nerves. Lifting lantern, they found pulley wheel controlling second portcullis of outer gate. Creaked from misuse. They needed drawbridge too, across yard and up spiral of Wailing Tower. Robb gestured. Mormont women to hold wheel, Karstarks to wedge cogs with pitons, Blackfish with him. They darted to door, slipped into corridor heavy with forge smoke. Harrenhal pulsed awake. Hammers ringing, oxen lowing. Yet storm of activity hid pair of traders moving swift. Up spiral they went. Each step groaned, but noise drowned in wider clangor. At top, machinery room yawned. Gears thick as wagon wheels, chain links hand-sized.
Aluna enginae lat tandagreas a pot.
He turned, eyes widening. Robb seized him, blade pressed. Quiet and live. The lad nodded frantically. Brinden unpinned chain brake. Drawbridge iron teeth clanked. Outside, trumpets pierced. The real host attacking on schedule. Through arrow slit Robb glimpsed Grachan's direwolf banner galloping causeway. Lightning quick. Perfect. He shoved the engineer into corner, bound wrists with cord. Then he and Brinden spun crank that lifted drawbridge segments ratcheting upward. Beneath them alarms pealed. Drums sounded. Guards shouted orders. Smoke suddenly belched across courtyard. The grain granary on fire courtesy of river archers. Wind carried sparks to Kingspire roof. Embers danced like devils. Bolton soldiers scrambled with buckets, curses rising. Robb dashed down spiral, crossing catwalk to outer portcullis tower. Mormont women had gears in motion. Portcullis rose foot by foot. Through bars he saw gray wind streaking across drawbridge, muzzle bloody, tearing a Bolton pikeman aside. Behind, main gate jammed with Stark and river knights flooding in. Arrows rained from ramparts, but many archers wore Bolton colors and now found foes at back as small folk seized dropped blades. Chaos reigned. Robb threw himself into whirlwind. Sword out, cutting path to center where Bolton banners rallied. He carved through a bearded sellsword, shoulder to hip. Gray wind leapt to his flank. Together they became storm front. He felt surge of men behind. Umber roars, Karstark muttered prayers. Within minutes outer yard belonged to the wolf. Fires roared high. Grain exploded in flame shrapnel. Smoke choked. Trumpet blasts from Widow's Tower signaled fallback. Robb pushed toward it. At tower foot stood a pale man in leech-purple cloak. Roose Bolton. On either side, 10 household guards hammered shields with axes. Bolton's eyes, pale, unblinking, met Robb's across swirl of ash. He lifted voice, eerie calm. King Robb, you wear victory's soot, but fire burns all. Robb paced forward, blade lowered but ready. You betrayed Guestright without fireplace to hide behind. Roose, surrender. Bolton's lips twitched into ghost smile. Guestright, yet you recall my banner. Flayed men hung upside down. Mercy is not our word. I served you until your cause decayed beneath poor counsel. He cast glance upward where arrow slits glowed red. Release me and I open vaults of Casterly coin. Have to feed your north this winter. I leave Riverlands, return to Dreadfort. We remain respectful neighbors. Great John stomped beside Robb, axe slick crimson. Flay your own wits. We take your hide for banners. Bolton sighed. A choice then. He raised hand. Arrows screamed from Widow's windows, darting downward. Yet they did not target Robb's group. They raked Bolton's own soldiers. 2 guards collapsed, eyes wide. Others shouted confusion. A second volley followed, thinning them further. Robb looked up. Arrow fletchings bore blue, not the crimson Bolton used. Blackfish billets. Brynden had seized Tower's archers. Bolton's composure cracked. He stepped back toward door, but gray wind lunged, jaws locking arm. Roose cried out for first-time mortal. Robb rushed, tackling him. They fell in mud and ash. He pressed sword point to Bolton's throat. Around, surviving Bolton guards threw down axes as Stark ranks closed. Breath ragged, Robb spoke low. This blade took Black Walder. Thirsts yet. Give me reason to spare you. Bolton's eyes held no fear, only cold curiosity. My life means nothing, but your father's daughters live. I brokered with Varys girls safe in King's Landing brothel. Kill me and spiders cut threads. Robb's heart hammered. Arya Sansa names ached. He forced hands steady. Proof. Bolton gestured weakly toward cloak pocket. Great John rifled, produced scroll sealed with Mockingbird. Catelyn, arriving breathlessly, snatched and unrolled. A message from Varys indeed, referencing Wolf Maidens comfortable. No signature but Spider's little drawings. Robb's sword trembled. To kill Bolton now might doom sisters, yet letting traitor live risked war's memory undone. He turned eyes to Catelyn. She shut them, pain raw but nodded once. He sheathed blade. Roose Bolton, I strip you of titles, lands, and claims. You will be delivered to Castle Black to live life in black until nights beyond counting. Take him. Shackles clamped. Bolton offered thin smile despite bite wound bleeding. The wall suits me, your grace. Cold reminds men of truth. Warmth lies. They dragged him away. Victory's roar billowed, but Robb felt weight of winter heavier. Cleanup spanned long hours. Fires doused, wounded carried to smithy turned infirmary. Catelyn organized healers. Edmure directed small folk to ditch mass graves outside Curtain Wall. Brynden interrogated surviving officers, gleaning that Bolton's ravens had flown to King's Landing just 2 days earlier, promising Harrenhal's loyalty and Northman heads. Robb dispatched Karstark outriders to hunt any stray birds. Still, word likely reached Lannisters already. Inside Broken Great Hall, they found long trestles set for feast never served. At high table perched a monstrous helm wrought like flayed face. Beneath it a parchment ledger of names, each crossed red. Prisoners slowly starved. Among scribbles Robb read Arya Stark, rumored alive. Seek confirmation. His stomach tightened. Night fell. Harrenhal's courtyard now writhed with slow victory fires, but a hush overlay, like gods holding breath. Robb stood atop Kingspire parapet gazing across God's eye-glistening silver. The lake looked placid, yet mists drifted over its Isle of Faces, whisper shapes swirling. Footsteps approached. Lady Meej bringing news. Scouts had captured a squire fleeing on Roan. Under questioning, he confessed Gregor Clegane massing at Maidenpool with 2,000 foot. Worse, Tywin marched from King's Landing with fresh Sellsword companies of the Golden Company finally landed in Stormlands. Their elephants left drowned but pikes intact. War broadened, not shrank. Robb absorbed, gaze never leaving water. One front closes, three open. Yet our answer stands. Riverlands hold with us. Frey treachery purged, Bolton broken. He exhaled frost. We march next to Seat of Kings. Meej's eyes glimmered torchlight. Across Blackwater, walls high. Walls fall, Robb said. But first we gather allies. Stormlanders, maybe Dornish if Joffrey spurned their princess betrothal. And one more. He pointed blade toward north horizon though glimpse blocked by night. My uncle Benjen taught. Even lone direwolf is dangerous. Packed together unstoppable. We call the pack. Morning council convened within Harrenhal's scorched September. Robb announced edict. Ravens to White Harbor, Bear Island, Deepwood Motte. Every lord able to spare men must ride south under Wyman Manderly's sail to Riverrun and then on to Harrenhal. The North would march united. From Riverrun Edmure would govern Riverlands, repairing levees, storing grain. Brynden named Castellane of Harrenhal to secure. Bolton garrison dispersed, flayed banners burned. A captured maester, quaking, petitioned to remain. Robb agreed on vow of obedience, but he also dispatched Meej's daughter Lyra to learn healing from him, ensuring loyalty. 1 hour after council, a horn sounded gate. Scouts hauled forward a ragged boy with shaggy dark hair, half-starved. He collapsed before Robb, pressing brow to ground. Cupbearer once to Ser Gregor, he croaked. I saw your sister, Arya, wild like ferret, quick. She fled with a brotherhood, heading northwest weeks ago. He produced small wooden carving of a wolf, rough but unmistakable. Robb's throat caught. He thanked boy, promised food. Hope could be tiny as wooden charm, yet weigh as mountain. That night, Robb visited dungeons newly converted to storage. In a cell sat Jaime Lannister still, wrists manacled to wall loop. He peered as Robb entered, torch casting uneven glow. So, Jaime drawled, the young wolf bests another traitor. You collect them like sigils. Robb leaned against wall. Bolton at the wall, Frey tongueless, Lannister chained. Sigils enough. Jaime shrugged. Do you imagine taking King's Landing cleansed by righteousness? City will chew ideals and spit bones. Robb's eyes steeled. Perhaps. Yet each bone will know it stood for honor. Jaime smirked. Honor? Ask Ned Stark. The words cut, but Robb held gaze. You'll walk south with me, Robb said. When we parley gates, I will trade you for my sisters. Oh, sweet Ling. Jaime laughed, echo metallic. My sister values no life above crown, not even mine, especially not mine these days. Smirk faltered. She might send you heads for answer. Robb turned to leave. Then pray she loves her children more than you. Outside corridor, cool draft met him. He realized despite horrors, despite new wars, hope flickered again. The shape of wooden direwolf in his pocket, weight slight yet present. Weeks unfurled like banners in winter wind. Harrenhal became hive of hammer and saw, forging spearheads, mending armor. Blackfish's archers drilled from ramparts. Umber and Karstark troops sparred in muddy yard. New arrivals trickled. Lord Wyman's white sails cresting lake with levy of stout hearts. Meej's sister bears from Bear Island clad in sea otter cloaks. Glover men ragged yet fierce. Word of Robb's justice spread. Peasants along Trident hailed the young wolf not only for victories but for sparing innocents within the Twins and Harrenhal. Stories told that he whispered to trees before battles and trees answered. That dire wolf prowled his dreams. Inside Widow's Tower Solar, Robb pored over maps with Davos Seaworth, newly arrived envoy of Stannis Baratheon sailing up Blackwater with small fleet. Davos brought proposal. Joint assault on King's Landing, Stannis striking from sea, Robb from River Road. In return, Stannis would acknowledge northern independence after victory. Robb studied Davos, hand of a would-be king, plain man smelling of tar and salt. Stannis means to face Lannisters and Golden Company both. Towers of King's Landing still smoke from wildfire 2 years past. How fare your own numbers? Davos answered honest, depleted. Yet Melisandre's fires foretold victory if King of Wolves joined. Robb admired candor, but war demanded calculus. He promised reply after Ravenfoil moot with his lords. The moot convened under Kingspire's shadow. Great John roared that Dragon Queen across narrow sea might land any moon and burn all. Better hold north walls and let south self-slaughter. Meege urged alliance. Better 2 righteous kings than Lannister whelp. Brynden weighed supply lines. Winter wagons to feed host crossing crownlands. Catelyn spoke last, reminding them of daughters. Her voice soft, yet every word struck hearts. Robb decided. Send 3,000 under Great John to screen crownlands, harry Golden Company. Pin them away from Blackwater. Main host 7,000 Northmen plus 4,000 Riverlords would meet Stannis outside Duskendale, then march combined to Blackwater Gate. He wrote reply to Stannis bearing signature Robb Stark, King of North and Trident. Davos sailed before moon rose. Preparations began. Siege rams carved from Harrenhal's ancient beams, mantlets patched with hide, barrels of pitch carded. Maester Tom bred ravens to deliver coded orders. Karstark smiths forged arrowheads shaped like fangs. During final week, a raven from Wall arrived, to Maester Tom yet addressed to Robb. It bore dire portent. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont slain, mutiny at Craster's, dead walking even south of Wall, Night's Watch ravaged. Sender unknown but signed 3 letters, J. S. The parchment edges smeared with ashy residue as though carried through fire. Robb read thrice. The war for throne seemed suddenly small. He called council midnight. Voices argued, Wall far, South mission near. Robb faced them weary. If Wall falls, all South matters not, yet cannot split again. Dilemma tore like trap jaws. Catelyn suggested dispatching smaller force north under trusted commander. Robb considered Galbart Glover? Perhaps. While he weighed, a horn blast boomed outside. Scouts galloped in. Banners approaching from northeast, mummers' wagons, tattercloaks, a great weirwood face painted on sheet. Brotherhood without banners. At dawn they arrived under orange sky. Out stepped Thuras of Myr, red robe tattered, and at his side a girl with short dark hair, eyes gray and fierce, Arya Stark. Robb's heart stopped. She sprinted across yard, leaping over puddles and slammed into his arms. Tears he had buried since Winterfell burned sprang free. She spoke breathless. I tried to find you. Wolves are meant together. He laughed, wept, held her tight. Later, around hearth, Arya told story, He hound, the inn, barracks resurrected plight, red priest dreams. Brotherhood came after Bolton riders, seized her back. Hearing Robb toppled Frey treachery, they rode to him. Also word along Trident said Sansa forced betrothal to Willis Tyrell after Joffrey gone. But Queen Mother kept grip. Sansa safe for now. 2 Starks now within these walls, the pack indeed forming. Robb summoned Quills, penned letter to Lord Commander Interim, call for meeting at Queen's Crown to send grain and men. He tasked Galbart Glover plus 2,000 lightly equipped rangers to ride north after harvest, reinforced with Brotherhood scouts. Arya begged join, but he forbade. She scowled yet relented, taking needle to practice daily with Mormont women. Departure day came crisp and brittle. Harrenhal banners parted as columns flowed. Great John vanguard east with axes high. Glover rangers north. Robb corps south rode behind Davos's fleet-hugging coast. Trumpets cried farewell. Catelyn watched from tower, heart torn yet proud. Robb rode at head, Arya beside for first mile, then splitting back to castle. Grey wind howled, pack responding across ranks, dogs barking, men beating shields. The road ahead shone under low sun, a river of frost-silvered hopes. Within Harrenhal's walls, Blackfish fixed fresh direwolf over gate, its silver eyes polished to catch dawn. He spoke to Catelyn, voice rust and gravel. If the world forgets what honor looks like, we will remind them. A boy became wolf, devoured treachery, yet left bones of mercy. Caitlin touched cool metal of the sigil. And may the gods let that mercy guide him all his days. Far ahead, across leafless fields, young king pressed toward destiny. Hearts beating cadence with hooves, standard snapping. Clouds gathered but light broke between them, streaming like swords drawn by heavens in silent salute. And somewhere beyond horizon, the Blackwater waited, its currents whispering of siege towers and wildfire, of queens and lions and dragons still across seas, but also of wolves unbowed, justice-tempered, now marching as one toward dawn that might yet belong to them. The land upon which Robb Stark's renewed host advanced lay in uneasy slumber, as though every hedgerow, barrow, and frost hollow waited to see which master might finally lay claim. Winter felt very near here in the upper Crownlands, though the snows had not yet fallen. Instead, a chill seeped up from the dark soil, condensing on the rims of helms and the hooves of war horses so that every morning horse lines steamed like boiling cauldrons. Hornbeams stood skeletal, birches flayed of their bark by passing soldiers who needed kindling, groves of half-dead oak dotted with abandoned campsites where first the Lannisters, then the Golden Company, then Stormlander scouts had all passed in turn. Yet for 5 long, measured days the Lion Banner and the Sellsword Wyvern kept their distance. Scouts glimpsed them only as distant flashes of gilt or ghost-white pennons on the far ridges. They were not ready for a decisive clash, and Robb Stark meant to keep it that way while his own strength gathered like a coiled spring. He rode at the head of the van with the Blackfish and Lady Meege, his scarred brow bared to the weak sun. Where once a king might have worn the gleam of youth like armor, he now wore a mantle of quiet gravity, yet beneath it beat a corrosive impatience. At every milepost he found himself looking forward, not back, toward Duskendale, where Davos Seaworth had promised a harbor filled with black-hulled carracks, Stormlander knights, and the stern hand of King Stannis, toward the Blackwater rush beyond, where a different king, Tom Baratheon, Lannister puppet or rightful heir depending on who told the tale, sat within red stone walls and still sent coins stamped with Joffrey's sneering visage. Toward the wall, ever distant, where Galbart Glover and the Brotherhood without banners rode north, even now with 2,000 wolves to face something older than Lannisters or Starks or the petty flames of southern politics. Toward everything. He also thought of Bolton's words, whispered amid the fire and chaos of Harrenhal, that Sansa Stark's safety hinged on Varys' silken calculations. Every evening, after reports were taken and scouts dismissed, Robb unfolded the wooden wolf charm Arya had brought from the Brotherhood and set it on his camp table where the lamplight could carve its grain into tiny hills and valleys. Across the crude carving he laid the parchment from Varys, a mockingbird sigil in purple wax already cracked. Side by side the pieces looked like a riddle, the innocent resilience of the North balanced against the sly promise of a man who trafficked in secrets. Always Robb folded them both away before dawn, as though hiding them from the sun might somehow keep his sisters safer. On the 6th day out of Harrenhal, the vanguard struck the Rose Road, though few roses survived to mark its name. Petals had been trampled into mud half a year ago when Tywin's carts rolled north, then ground into dust beneath the Iron Throne's last levy. What remained was a broad embankment of broken paving stones and wagon ruts rimmed by thorn scrub. The Rose Road crossed a wide plateau of red soil before plunging down to the coast. Duskendale lay beyond the ridgeline, its gray roofs and squat watchtowers only glimpsed when a gust parted the autumn haze. Robb called halt at mid-morning and let the column dress ranks. Messengers galloped ahead beneath a white flag marked with the burning heart sigil of Stannis. A return galloper met them before noon, bearing Stannis' signet and permission for the Northmen to encamp along the old Duskwood west of town. By late afternoon pavilions had sprouted like black, gray, and blue mushrooms amid the leafless trees. Campfires burned in neat clusters. Sentries alike to Stark and Stormlander cried hollow-o from intersecting patrol paths. Intermingling always brought friction. Riverlanders glowered at the spare-built Baratheon men whose tabards bore the fiery heart of R'hllor, while Lady Meage's she-bears bristled at the dour earnestness of Stannis' knights. But silent curiosity prevailed over scuffle. Robb knew this brittle peace must hold for at least a fortnight, the time needed for wagons of grain from White Harbor to reach them, and for Davos's black sails, delayed by contrary winds, to finish towing siege barges up the coast. He sought counsel beneath a stripped maple half a mile inside Stannis's lines. There the king in the narrow sea had set a modest command tent, plain as a soldier's but for careful stitching of cloth of gold edging. Stannis Baratheon himself received Robb and his captains in tabard over mail, sword at belt though he was within his own camps. He was tall as Ned had been, but Robb owned. His cheeks were hollows, his smile a rumor left behind after the rebellion. The red woman Melisandre stood slightly behind him, fire-red eyes gleaming above a gorget of rubies. Robb had feared her presence more than Stannis's iron severity, yet as introductions passed she said not a word, only watched, assessing each man as though glimpsing their fates flickering around them. Stannis spoke little of prophecy, nothing of gods. Instead they shared maps. Blackfish laid out the king's road south of Maidenpool where the Golden Company massed. Stannis traced the shallows of Blackwater Bay where Salador's Lyseni frigates could attempt a feigned landing to draw Joffrey's fleet downriver. Plans nested within plans like iron spikes within a battering ram. Yet for all the talk of supply lines and trebuchets, what stuck in Robb's mind was the flicker he saw, once only, in Stannis's eyes as he studied the sigil of the direwolf. A flash of yearning quickly masked. Stannis coveted the North's independence, perhaps not for itself but to wield as bargaining chip against the southern lords still wavering. Robb made note. After sunset, Robb returned to his own camp to find Arya sparring by lamplight with Lyanna Mormont. 13 and fierce, both wooden blades whipping the night air. A small ring of soldiers clapped or placed coppers on who would land the first clean strike. Arya fought with low, prowling footwork taught by Syrio, needlepoint flicks, sudden dance-like reversals that left Lyanna's broadsword swishing empty space. When Arya finally tagged the bear cub on backside, laughter rang. Lyanna scowled then laughed too, clapping Arya's shoulder. The crowd dispersed, praising both. Robb watched from the edge, a smile tugging at corners of his mouth despite the weight he carried. His sister's gray eyes flashed, seeing him. She saluted with the wooden sword as though it were Valyrian steel, and he returned the gesture. In that moment the war felt almost winnable. As nights passed the two armies stitched themselves together. Great John Umber learned to gamble over dwarf bones with Ser Imry Florent. Karstark archers taught Stormlander levies to fletch with owl feathers for silent flight. Davos and Catelyn sat over stew to discuss grain and barter. Once Arya sneaked beyond the sentry line at dusk and found a lone red priest lighting tiny fires atop clay dishes, each flame fed by drops of his own blood. When he saw her he merely bowed. She fled, unsettled, and told Gendry, now forging horseshoes in the camp smithy, to keep hammers nearby. Word of the wall's plight trickled down, lending urgency to every hammer blow and every picket stake driven deep. By the first quarter moon Davos's fleet drifted into Duskendale harbor, black sails furled like wings of roosting bats. On the same tide rode 3 galleys under the trident banner of House Tully, their decks crowded with fresh-caught river knights who lost everything when Lannisters razed their keeps. They brought the news that Tywin's host had broken from Maidenpool and now marched west of Rosby, hugging the forest roads. 30,000 strong if rumor served, Golden Company elephants replaced by heavy horse since the beasts had drowned. Worse, Qyburn's Silent Legion, an unnatural corps of reanimated captives, was whispered to march within their baggage train, bound in iron and muzzles. Some men scoffed, others crossed themselves. Robb did neither. He simply added a line of crimson ink to his map, marking unknown horrors. Stannis called council again. This time it met within the low stone shell of Duskendale's half-burnt sept, reconsecrated by both the Red Priests and the Northern Septons in awkward union. Robb arrived with the Blackfish, Greatjon, Meege, and, at her insistence, Arya, who now carried Needle at her belt like a full-grown soldier. They found Stannis standing apart from his own captains, arms behind back, studying the cracked stained glass opposite. It still held faint fragments of the Seven, each face blackened by the fire that had gutted the building earlier in the war. The meeting began with Davos recounting Blackwater currents and tides. The chains Tyrion once raised across the river had never been fully removed but lay rusting in secret pits. So, too, did caches of wildfire sealed by the Alchemist's Guild. Stannis set his jaw like a closing vice. "Tyrion will have new tricks," he said, voice gravel. "We answer with shafts and iron, not empty hope. I brought 6 leather-clad turtle barges, floating shields against flame. Seaworth, you and Ser Imry run them upriver on the night preceding the assault under muffled oars." Robb's gaze tracked the plan. His own task was to strike the Rose Road Gate at dawn while Stannis' fleet drew off the Royal Navy. But Tywin's fresh host threatened to fall on their rear. The chessboard stretched. If Robb turned to meet Tywin, the city might hold. If he ignored the Lion, the hammer blow could shatter his siege lines. He voiced the dilemma. Stannis answered without hesitation. "Let Tywin come. His pride will drive him straight at us. We dig ditches, raise stakes. Crownlanders weary. They will break at first show of lion. Then by gods red or new we bury him beneath his own dead." Melisandre lifted hands over a small brazier that stood at the council's edge. Flames trembled crimson as she murmured in her Lysine tongue. Through smoky veil her gaze fell upon Robb. "I see gray mist swirling above a crown of ice," she whispered. "I see a sword of dawn's first light poised above a bleeding stag. Which blade will fall first? King of Snow." Great John muttered something unkind. Robb met her eyes unflinchingly. "Prophecy is a wheel," he said, recalling old Nan's tales. "It turns whether men walk beneath it or not. I prefer the steel in my hand." Melisandre smiled faintly, as hunters smiled at wary prey, then drifted back into shadow. 2 days later, vanguards marched south again. Only 10 miles, just enough to position on narrow ridge overlooking the bend in the Blackwater known as the Hook. Below lay marshy flats crossed by dikes. Beyond, King's Landing's northernmost walls rose slate-gray in haze. Smoke curled skyward from chimneys and smithies. On the river, bright sails of the royal fleet glided in lazy patrol arcs, innocent as swans though each hull bristled with scorpions and iron prows. Stormlanders pitched camp along ridge's spine, Northmen along its shoulders, thickening trenches with pine stakes. Siege rams advanced on wagon beds. Trebuchets of Harrenhal design were reassembled, each arm cabled with plated hemp as thick as a man's thigh. And through it all, strict silence reigned. Fires banked low, camp followers tucked into earthen huts, every shield dulled with soot. On the third night, drums far to the north told of Tywin's approach. Scouts reported golden lions glinting by moonlight across the headwaters of Slaughterfield Creek. Instead of shying, men felt a surge. They had braced for this. Robb ordered signal beacons along ridge top ignited at half-height, enough for Tywin's outriders to see that wolves and fiery stags already occupied the high ground. Let the lion decide whether to test them in darkness. Within the hour, a gnarled shadow crept into the king's tent. Jaime Lannister, shackled wrist to belt chain, escorted by 4 Stark spearmen. Jaime's smile gleamed in torchlight. "I thought you'd want fresh news, Your Grace. My father's scouts whisper blood tonight. If they attack in dark, your crossbowmen will shoot each other. If at dawn, their arrows come with sunrise in your eyes. Smart, don't you agree?" Robb eyed him. "You think Tywin will gamble house on night charge?" "Father never risks, only calculates," Jaime said. "He will feint at ridge, draw you down, then slip half his army around to break your siege lines." He leaned in, chain clinking. "If I were you, I'd watch the gullies by the willow pond south of the Hook. Easy ground for flanking column." Great John laughed. "You think we trust Lion's Cub?" Jaime shrugged. "I'd prefer not to starve behind your lines when Tywin pushes you into the river." His smile dried. "But you asked for advice." Robb considered. Jaime's cunning had undone more foes than his blade. He dispatched Blackfish to double sentries at the gullies. Later, in pre-dawn gloam, horns wailed from that exact sector. Golden Company cataphracts had slithered through reeds, hoping to ride up under darkness. But Stark pikes formed schiltron. Archers lit pitch-tipped arrows, turning the marsh into a burning morass where horse and rider screamed. When sunlight soared above ridge, it found a charred tangle and survivors already bound. Word spread before breakfast. the Golden Company's famed right flank broken by mere mud and arrows.
Morale liebt.
And still Tywin's main infantry lingered distant, hesitant. Robb thanked Jaime with a curt nod that neither man enjoyed. That evening Jaime asked for parchment to write to his sister. Robb granted. The letter, sealed and unsealed later by Robb's spies, spoke strangely of debts, the weight of oaths, the fear of wildfire. "Tell her," Jaime wrote, "I have seen wolves move in silence. They are not the pack she imagines. Whatever you do, keep the little ones safe. I beg you." Robb, reading this, almost felt sorrow, then remembered Ned's bones entombed far in Winterfell crypts and sealed the message away. While engineers tightened trebuchet ropes, the direwolf host whispered of other rumors. That Euron Greyjoy's longships, blacker than night, sailed toward the Reach. That a Targaryen boy had risen in stepstones with a Sellsword prince by his side. That Daenerys Stormborn herself had reached Pentos with 3 dragons large enough to darken the sun. Robb forced such tales aside, one war at a time. On the ridge's eastern edge, Arya climbed a dead elm nightly to spy King's Landing's sprawl. She saw only torch-prick constellations, but in her mind she mapped each street from tales Hound had told. Flea Bottom's warrens, September of Baelor's broken steps, the great hill where dragon skulls once lurked. She did not trust Davos's plan to ferry letters of clemency into the city. "Words don't open iron gates," she told Gendry, who hammered rivets in their armor. "But steel keys do." She meant to be one of those keys. Robb knew it, and it frightened him. But he also saw in Arya the restless blood that had once driven Lyanna Stark to rebel against the world. He would not cage her outright, so he found her by forged smoke and offered compromise. She would lead a small infiltration team, men of the Brotherhood who knew King's Landing's drains, on the eve of siege to open Mudgate from within, once Stannis' turtles pressed upriver. Arya grinned wolfishly, accepted. She spent next days with Thuras of Myr practicing rooftop leaps and learning to read the cadence of patrol horns. Then, finally, the night of the Blackwater came round again. It began with stillness. A low fog slid off the river, cloaking dented lanterns on watchtowers, muting the coughs of sailors aboard royal dramans. Under that cover, Davos guided 6 turtle barges rowed by Stormlander volunteers, each deck plated with hides soaked in seawater. They glided like silent beetles beneath the chain winch, still broken, then angled toward the city wharfs. Atop each barge crouched archers with sandbags of wet wool to smother any sudden flame. Overhead, the moon hid behind clouds so completely that Davos later said he steered by the smell of shore refuse alone. At the same hour, Arya's band slipped from the trench line, wearing drab cloaks and faces smeared with tallow. They carried only daggers and small crossbows. Even Needle looked oversized for such stealth. Thuras guided them to an old culvert half-choked with debris. They vanished through it. Just after third watch, Northman trumpets sounded one long note, signal to begin creeping siege rams downslope. Tywin's outriders, still stung from marsh rout, pulled back. But when the first ram lurched into torchlight, Blackfish's archers loosed 1,000 arrows over its roof toward the walls. Not to kill, but to drive guards inward. Hidden behind those shadows, a team of miners raced forward and lit fuses at wall base. Small black powder charges purchased from Lys. Within city, wildfire erupted unexpectedly, but not by Lannister design. On Shipbreaker's Wharf, one of Tyrion's old caches had been sabotaged by Arya's team in advance, melting a segment of quay and forcing royal dramans to cast off lines in panic. As they swung around, Davos's turtle barges angled their shields and absorbed green fire that geysered from cracked barrels. The conflagration painted fog a sickly emerald that could be seen from the ridge, a phantom dawn. That uncanny glow also exposed Tywin's massed infantry mustered behind willow marshes. In its light, Robb saw banners ripple, saw lion standards half-drawn. Hesitant, he took chance, ordered umber drums to pound, Karstark horns to blare. His center advanced only 200 pock. Enough to show teeth, then halted, taunting. Tywin's caution warred with his pride. The field between ridge and marsh stayed silent, tension vibrating. On river, scorpions spat iron bolts. 2 turtle barges splintered. Davos's flagship slipped through parted harbor chain and grounded beneath city wall where mud gate met waterline. Grapnels flew. Ropes tightened. Stormlanders swarmed up. From inside, Arya's band overcame sleepy guards and hauled pulleys. Gate rose. Somewhere a bell clanged. And across ridge, Robb thrust sword skyward, order to charge. In that instant, chaos blossomed on three fronts. Northmen poured down ridge in ordered wedges, shields interlocked. Stormlanders rolled log rafts behind them to ferry spare ladders. Archer companies loosed black-fletched shafts into advancing Crownlander levies who stumbled from gatehouse barracks to meet threat they barely understood. Mud churned. Men screamed. The battle for King's Landing began anew. But for Robb, the world narrowed to moments. Hooves drumming under him as he led the center wedge, gray wind sprinting ahead like living lightning. The hiss of scorpion bolts slicing air. The deep boom of wildfire explosions that scattered green shards across night. The sight of Arya's small figure waving a torch atop the mud gate wall, signaling they had cut the internal chains. He lifted his own torch in reply, heart hammering with savage hope. On his flanks, Great John and Meej roared war cries, their columns hitting outer palisade. Ladders slammed, grapples bit. Tywin's host finally surged from marshes, horns braying. Too late. Their cavalry found Stark rear guard braced in spike-lined ditches, pavises planted, long pikes couched. Horses shrieked, broken on stakes. The Lion's main thrust was forced to wheel and ride north along the ridge's backside, seeking easier ground. There they collided with Baratheon reserves that sallied from Duskendale Woods in perfect timing. Stannis' contribution to this wargame. Within walls, Arya darted through smoke toward City Square, searching for direction to the Tower of the Hand, where she believed Sansa kept. Instead, she found the hulking form of Sandor Clegane wrestling 3 gold cloak officers at once. His burned face twisted. Without hesitation, she plunged needle through thigh of one officer, giving the Hound advantage to crack skulls. Blood splashed. They fled together down an alley. "Little wolf," Clegane growled. "Your brother's devils swarm like ants. Take me to them." She just grinned. Robb reached top of wall at dawn. Behind him, rivers of men still poured upward. Ahead, the city sprawled like a wounded beast, rooftops lit by flames, bells tolling discord. He tasted soot and copper on the wind. No cheer escaped his throat. This was only start. Victory Baseline would be taking outer districts before sunset, establishing supply bridges over river, and withstanding Tywin's inevitable attempt to relieve again. Yet he felt a fierce clarity. This living storm was what all those cold nights in the Wolfswood had trained him for. He raised the direwolf banner over Mudgate. On parapet beside him, Melisandre appeared, robes untouched by grime, eyes glowing in newborn sun. "The wheel turns," she said softly. "Ash becomes seed. Fire meets ice." She extended hand. For heartbeat, he thought she might fling him into the flame of her god. Instead, she brushed fingers along Banner's fabric, murmuring a phrase in Valyrian. The cloth rippled though no breeze blew. She smiled, stepped back, vanished down stair. Great John thundered upstairs moments later, spattered with muck. "Stannis' fleet holds Blackwater mouth. Lions broke on our pikes. But the Golden Company regroups west of the Chequy Gate. Karstarks hold them for now." Robb nodded, mind already mapping next hours. "Send word to Stannis. Unleash Jeddak's trebuchets on Flea Bottom. Smoke will mask our second ladder wave. Tell Davos to beach rams 200 yards upriver. Ready for chain crossing at noon. And find Thuras. His men know which stable holds the royal elephants. They must be loosed inside palace grounds to sow chaos." Great John laughed like avalanche. "Aye, your grace, though I doubt we'll find many elephants left." Robb's lips quirked. "A man can dream." He glanced toward the red keep atop Aegon's Hill, its crimson walls catching first true sunlight of day. Somewhere inside those towers sat Joffrey or Tommen or whatever puppet wore crown now, safeguarded by white cloaks and wildfire caches. Beside that keep rose the Tower of the Hand and the slender spire of the Great September, still pockmarked by dragonfire from the Civil War years ago. And beyond all, faint in haze, He imagined vantage of Varys's little birds fluttering. He took one steadying breath, then descended into streets now echoing with battle. His sword raised, gray wind bounding ahead. Around him roared the thunder of 10,000 hearts. North, river, storm, pounding in unison toward the vast and terrible unknown. The dawn looked chill and perilous, but it was their dawn. Hours blurred into a red-soaked tapestry. Alley to alley, courtyard to courtyard, Robb's men advanced, pushing, falling back, pushing again. Roof tiles shattered beneath scorpion bolts. Market stalls erupted in flame where wildfire canisters overturned. At Cobbler's Square, a battered host of City Watch laid down arms rather than be crushed between Umber axes and Baratheon spears. Robb spared them, posting Stormlander sergeants to guard prisoners, a decision that bought him local guides eager to save skins. These men pointed out hidden sally doors through which Lannister knights now attempted to ride forth and harry the siege lines. Each door became trap, closed by Mormont warriors and spikes. By mid-afternoon, the first direwolf standard appeared at the foot of Visanyas Hill. Robb, breath ragged, accepted flask of river water from Arya, who seemed to materialize amid smoke like an alley cat, hair wild, grin fiercer. She reported Sansa's rumored quarters now empty. A maid whispered Queen Mother moved her to Maegor's Holdfast days ago. The Hound, she claimed, had vanished into tunnels after saving her life once more. She meant to find him. Robb forbade, but she was gone. Sun dipped low behind marble spires. Messengers brought dire but exhilarating news. Tywin's host in full retreat north toward the stinking river, Stannis' soldiers pressing them. Prison wagons rusted in mud with lions still painted crimson. Golden Company survivors fled inside city by the Dragon Gate only to find it barred by Stark outriders. Caught, they scattered through hedge mazes and old burnt septs, lacking cause. Robb made his night command post inside the shattered ruins of the Dragon Pit. Its vast dome had collapsed long ago, but half-arches formed a skeletal nave where stars flickered overhead. Fires lit beast skulls still embedded in walls. He stood among them, feeling the ghost of dragons yet smelling only burnt straw and man-sweat. Litter-bearers carried wounded here to triage. Maesters bound gashes under torch flicker. He saw Melisandre once more, gliding through carnage. She paused beside a dying archer and pressed fingertips to his brow. A ruby at her throat pulsed. Once, twice, the archer's breathing eased. He slipped into painless sleep, death deferred. Robb watched warily. She looked up, red eyes gleaming. "You stride paths of fire now, young wolf," she whispered. "Pray the snows beyond the wall stay sleeping until you finish this." Robb thought of Glover's Rangers. "Winter does not wait for prayers," he answered. She only smiled. At dawn of second day, horns blew from every captured tower. Banner of Direwolf now flew over Mudgate, Dragon Gate, and Lion Gate. Stormland stags snapped atop King's Gate. The city's outer ring belonged to them, save for the Red Keep whose crimson walls glowered. Trebuchets rolled forward, assembling within quarter-mile. Tywin's host was gone, leaving smoking camp traces. Victory seemed almost within reach. But within Maegor's Holdfast, Cersei Lannister still held Sansa, Tommen, and the Tyrell retinue hostage. Inside the city's labyrinth still lurked Gregor Clegane's remnants, zombie legion subject to Qyburn's whispers, crossbows in every window. Robb convened war council amid throne room of the ruined Dragon Pit, sun filtering through jagged sky windows. Stannis arrived, mailed fist dented, but eyes alight. He saluted terrain. "We breached the holdfast by rams and flame," he declared. Robb countered. Their sisters were inside. They must attempt parley. Davos offered middle course. Send Jaime Lannister under guard to propose exchange. Sansa for Jaime's freedom plus safe exile for Cersei's children. Stannis scoffed but yielded if Robb would stake Winterfell's last treasury chest as guarantee. Robb agreed. Coin less valuable than blood. Thus Jaime walked a final time into red walls he'd once called home, escorted by Thuras and 5 Brotherhood archers. He vanished through Gatehouse. For 2 tense hours ravens shuttled. At last gates opened again. Jaime emerged grim. He delivered message. Cersei refused. She clung to prophecy whispered by Maggie the Frog. A younger, more beautiful queen would depose her. She would burn city rather than yield. Wildfire casks already placed beneath September, Holdfast, great granaries. Lannister and Tyrell children would die with her foes. Stannis roared for immediate assault. Robb demanded alternate approach. Infiltration through sewer tunnels learned from Arya's perch. Arya volunteered again. Stannis balked. Melisandre's gaze flicked bright. "Let the girl be flame," she murmured. Robb gave consent but insisted on 8 Mormont shields to accompany. That night, Arya's team slipped under city once more, guided by narrow tunnels of dry sewer. High tide masked their entry. They advanced beneath torchlight. At same hour, Davos's galleys feigned retreat, lulling Royal Navy to chase. Then abrupt reversal trapped Southern Fleet between fireships. Flames licked Blackwater again, echo of earlier war but controlled. City defenders rushed to harbors, thinning holdfast walls exactly as Robb hoped. When first gray streaks of dawn cracked over Aegon's Hill, a tremor shook Maegor's holdfast. Not explosion, but the grinding of portcullis raising from within. On rampart appeared 2 figures, Arya Stark in ill-fitting gold cloak, and Sandor Clegane wielding torch. Behind them Mormont shields forced aside crossbowmen while Thuras waved red banner. They had found wildfire casks and quenched fuses using barrels of sewage. Found Sansa alive, pale but unharmed, but could not yet extract her while Lannister guards held inner courtyard. Robb seized moment. He led Arrowhead of 500 picked men, sprinting the causeway from Red Keep Outer Bailey to Holdfast Gate. Stormlanders provided shield rain against murder holes. They gained courtyard. There, amidst snarling Kingsguard led by Ser Boros Blunt, they saw a golden-haired girl behind a ring of swords, Sansa, tall now, trembling but singing some northern lullaby under breath.
Stale met stale in whirlwind.
Gray wind bounded, ripping plume from Boros's helm. Robb parried thrust, riposted, disarmed. Arya streaked in, needle-tip flashing. She hamstrung Ser Meryn Trant as he swung at Thuras. Blood sprayed banners, screams rose. The Hound faced 2 Tyrell knights who apparently served Cersei now. He cleaved them down. When the dust settled, white cloaks lay red-stained. Cersei herself was gone, retreated into Tower of the Hand with Qyburn and last alchemists. Sansa collapsed against Robb's chest. They held brief, fierce, time enough to feel each other's heartbeat. Then horns blared. From the west wall, Golden Company stragglers scaled grapples in last-ditch counter. Robb pressed Sansa into Brienne's arms. She had arrived with Davos, commanded escort to ferry her beyond battle lines. Then he turned to final push, up tower stairs, chasing the lioness. The corridors stank of wildfire and stale perfume. He found Cersei near the top hall before the chamber once Eddard Stark had used as hand. Poetic symmetry lost on her in panic. Qyburn fumbled with lantern near barrel labeled with alchemist glyphs. Cersei clutched small dagger at Tommen's throat while Ser Gregor, resurrected giant, blocked passage. Robb and 10 companions faced them, for a heartbeat all frozen. Then behind Robb, a new voice. Jaime, having followed unseen, calling, "Sister, don't." Cersei whirled. That instant Arya darted ahead. She leaped, slashing Gregor's hamstring with Valyrian dagger borrowed from Robb. It barely cut, yet the giant staggered. Thuras flung lantern. Wildfire splashed Gregor's helm, igniting. The monster flailed, dropping Maul. Jaime charged, interposing body between Tommen and Cersei. He spoke low. Robb could not hear words. Cersei's blade trembled. She pressed tip to her own throat, then faltered. Tears cut lines through soot. Jaime gently pried knife away. Tommen sobbed. Robb advanced. "It ends," he said. Cersei sank to knees. Outside windows, the sky now flushed gold. Full dawn over city in wolf and stag banners. Bells that once tolled for wildfire now rang for surrender. Robb looked upon throne towers, felt exhaustion like slab of ice within bones. Yet hope flickered fierce. Stannis entered chamber moments later, grim satisfaction curling his lip. He looked upon twins Lannister siblings, one kneeling, one standing resigned, then at Robb. "Dawn belongs to us," he said simply. Robb nodded. "May winter stay its hand long enough to matter." Across the city, horns blew 3 times, signal. Host secured, lion fallen, blazing no more. Men of North and Storm raised cheers that echoed off dragon-blackened walls. And above Dragon Pit ruins, where once kings chained beasts of fire, the direwolf banner whipped free in dawn wind, its silver eyes gleaming as if with new life. Beyond horizon, however, the wall waited, a silent admonition that wars do not end when men think they do. Snow still gathered in distant sky, swirling behind dim white figures with frozen blue eyes. But that was tomorrow's storm. For this single hard-won sunrise, Robb Stark let sword dip. He inhaled salt-tinged air sweeping off the Blackwater and listened to the strange, tentative murmur of a city learning to breathe again under new rule. Somewhere behind, Arya's clean laugh rang, sharp, fierce, utterly alive. Sansa's soft voice joined, tentative harmony. The pack was together at last, though scars still bled. Robb lifted his eyes to the Red Keep's broken battlements, and in that fleeting hush allowed himself one fragile thought. Home. Night settled over King's Landing like a weary blanket, its embers guttering after 2 days of flames. From the half-shattered windows of Maegor's Holdfast, Robb Stark watched the city's glow fade to a lattice of tired lanterns, each wick guarded by small folk who did not yet trust the dark. The wind that found him carried brine from the Blackwater mixed with soot and distant groans of masonry shifting in its wounds. The direwolf banner on the keep's highest turret snapped sluggishly, blood-black in moonlight. He had never dreamt the seat of Targaryen conquerors would feel so fragile. Below, in the maze of curtain walls, brothers reunited and strangers mourned. Northmen dug pyres for Umber spearmen and Karstark bowmen, while Stormlanders recited the fiery prayers of Lawler over their own dead. Bells had ceased, but hammers echoed as smiths reshaped buckled breastplates. Every anvil strike sounded like an aftershock of battle. Robb counted each clang and let it root him to the moment. Proof that men still labored for life, not slaughter. Tomorrow the city's new order would begin, and he must decide what that order would be. He turned from the window to the chamber behind him. It had been the Hand's Solar once, a long room of cedar paneling and leaded glass, its hearth carved with high dragons. Now the paneling was cracked by wildfire heat, scrolls strewn across the floor like autumn leaves. Arya crouched at the hearth feeding kindling to coals, her face lantern-lit and smudged. Opposite her, Sansa slept curled on a velvet chaise, pale as early frost. She wore a rough-spun cloak now instead of Lannister silk, but exhaustion drew her mouth into a brittle line. Beside her dozed Tommen, no crown, just a boy hugging a lion-embroidered cushion. Jaime Lannister sat cross-legged at his feet, shackles gone, wrists bound instead by a single leather thong more symbol than prison. By unspoken accord he had not fled. He watched his siblings with eyes that held remorse sharper than iron. Arya sensed Robb's gaze. She rose, wiping soot on tunic. "They're safe," she said, voice still pitched for caution though walls were yours. "I'll sit watch." "You've not slept," Robb answered. She shrugged, one corner of mouth lifting wolfish. He placed hand upon her shoulder. Bone and sinew trembled under dirt and leather, but the fire in her gray eyes had not dimmed in all these bloody months. "Rest?" he murmured, and at last she nodded, drifting toward pallet prepared near window. On the way she brushed fingers over needle's hilt. Then she slid down and was asleep before her head met folded cloak. Robb knelt to stir embers. Across flames Jaime spoke, voice low. "I sent word to my father to halt further bloodshed. If it reaches him..." He exhaled brittle laugh. "He may believe it another deception." "Your father listens only to advantage," Robb said. "He'll weigh coin of lives against his own hide. We'll see." Jaime's golden head tilted. "Kings often confuse justice with vengeance. I hope you know difference, Stark." Robb studied him, ragged hair, eyes bloodshot. "I've learned cost of both." Jaime's gaze flicked to the sisters. So have I. Dawn came thin and colorless. The first council of the conquered city assembled in the throne room, a hall still strewn with debris and gold cloaks corpses waiting for silent sisters. Sunlight spilled through a yawning breach blown in yesterday's melee, making ruby dust of ash motes. Robb entered escorted by Brienne and Lady Meech. At the dais waited Stannis, armor buffed but dented, Melisandre at his shoulder like a living flame. Davos Seaworth and the Blackfish stood below, studying parchments. Great John lounged by a fallen chandelier like a wolfhound. Cersei Lannister was not there. She lay confined 3 floors below, watched by Mormont bears who did not share her wine. Stannis lifted iron-veined brow. The city belongs to victors, yet famine shadows every alley. Granaries scarce survived wildfire. Rebuild them first or corpses will heap higher than dragon bones. Robb nodded. White Harbor grain ships ride south as we speak. Riverland's carts will follow once roads cleared. He spread a soot-scarred map across a trestle. More urgent, the wall. Mutiny, walking dead, wildlings massing. If we tarry here, we trade lion for ice. Melisandre's rubies pulsed. The darkness beyond the wall stirs. It will devour thrones and banners alike. Stannis' jaw clenched. Throne can wait. He faced Robb. I name you Lord Protector of the city until order set. My duty leads north. The Red Woman says the true war lies there. The hall buzzed. Storm Lords traded uncertain glances. Grachan's bark of approval boomed. Robb met Stannis' unflinching stare. I will hold the city only as long as needed, with Tully and Arryn Lords to balance. When winter breaks, we withdraw south of Neck. The north seeks no chains. Stannis gave short nod. So recorded. Davos penned. They hashed logistics. Stannis would leave at fortnight's end with 20 galleys, 3,000 hardened Stormlanders, and Robb's own volunteer band of Karstark archers who knew snows. They would sail O East Watch, march west along Wall to Castle Black. Robb retained the direwolf host but dispatched Raven Riders to hurry House Manderly's ships around Skagos, freighted with blankets and pickled fish. When council adjourned, Melisandre caught Robb by the breech, wind scuffing red hair against scorched marble. Ice and fire are twins, she whispered. If you would survive winter's maw, seek the flames beneath Dragonstone. Her gaze drifted northeast, as though sight pierced leagues. He frowned. She smiled, gliding away. In the days that followed, King's Landing's bruises darkened before they healed. Northmen patrolled streets in pairs with Stormlander sentries, stamping sigils on charred doors so bakers might reopen. Brothers without banners accepted pardons to police Flea Bottom. Their leader, Lord Beric, met Robb in the shadow of Baelor's ruins, sept and promised no small folk would starve while one brother still drew breath. Far above them, carpenters nailed planks over cracks in the holdfast, and maesters bled fever victims. Sansa oversaw makeshift kitchens. Face composed though eyes flinched at each Lannister lion scraped from signpost. She answered every timid bow from townsfolk with soft thanks. Her courtesy now sword-sharp, armor all the stronger for its gentleness. Arya spent hours in Red Keep's lowest vaults hunting stray alchemists who had fled with wildfire casks. Sandor Clegane trailed, muttering about little girls and bloody fools, yet following. Each night they dragged new prisoners to Brienne's tribunal. Jaime, under loose watch, aided them. He seemed intent on severing the last tendons of his family's tyranny. On the 5th dawn after victory, the Raven Tower doors burst open. A ragged Glover messenger staggered before Robb's cot, icicles fringing beard though he'd ridden south at breakneck. White mists at night fort, my lord, he gasped. Dead things in rags. Our outriders fell. Glover host retreats to Queen's Crown, but numbers thin. They beg steel. Robb's heart clenched. He convened Greatjon, Brynden, Davos, and Stannis at once. Stannis' reaction was iron inevitability. We sail tonight. Every moment lost feeds the dead. He turned to Robb. Send me your swiftest ravens. I will light beacons from Shadow Tower. Pray your north answers fast. Robb gripped his forearm. The north remembers. It will not fail. They parted upon the wind-blown quay where Stannis's galleys waited. Arya pressed package into Davos's hands, vials of wildfire she'd confiscated. "For dead that don't burn easy," she said. Davos winked, tucking them away. When sails unfurled and oars bit water, gray dawn swallowed the fleet like hungry tide. Robb returned to Red Keep and climbed the Tower of the Hand. There, behind iron-banded door, Cersei awaited judgment. She stood at window, hair shorn uneven, gazing toward charred sept as if still queen. When Robb entered, she turned slow, lips curling. "Your wolves chew the city's bones," she said, voice hoarse. "Enjoy throne of ashes." "I want no throne," Robb replied. "Only peace for my people." "Then you are fool. Peace is reveler who stays only until next goblet shatters." Her eyes, green as wildfire, glittered. "Release me and I'll show you how to keep order. My daughter's safe. Your sister's married to high lords. My sisters choose their own fates. As for you," he gestured to guards, "you will ride to Old Town under escort to stand trial before faith and realm. Let justice speak." She spat a laugh. "Men do love pageants of justice, yet every pageant ends in blood." She stepped closer, chains rattling. A knife in back, a child poisoned, a dragon over horizon. "Bleed yourself dry in courts, wolf. Lion will feast on your cubs again." Robb met venom with steady calm. "This lion's roar fades." He turned away, but her final words followed like frost. "The lioness is only the herald, Stark. Storm gathers across sea. Play at justice. Winter will eat you whole." Weeks rolled beneath steel-gray skies. Robb's council decreed grain rationing, began triage of city wells, sent envoys to Highgarden promising safe passage for Tyrell harvest wagons in exchange for bread. Garland Tyrell marched north with token retinue, wary yet willing to barter daughters' dowries for peace. Diplomacy engaged, leaving Robb bored of parchments. He itched for news from Wall. Ravens came sporadic, Stannis landed, Eastwatch battered, dead repelled by fire lines, but little else. One midnight the horizon answered. A foreboding red glow lit northeastern sky, too distant to be wildfire, yet lurid enough to paint clouds. Some claimed Stannis lit signal pyres along Frostfangs. Others swore dragons had flown. Robb went atop Aegon's high tower to watch. The glow pulsed, died, flared again. He felt chill that was not wind. Next day, a lone crow fluttered into Maester's rookery, half frozen. Scroll bore Stannis' seal. Castle black stands. But something rises east of Shadow Tower. White tempest, colder than death. Send cloth, oil, glass candles. Pray. Robb summoned council. Supplies already strained. Still he carved from stores. Lamp oil casks, Manderley wool, copper kettles, dragonglass daggers found in old alchemist vaults. He tasked Arya to escort convoy north with Brienne and quarter of his riders. She bristled, wanted to fight, but he insisted. Her quick blade and wits more needed on supply trail than behind King's Landing walls. Sansa embraced her farewell, slipping her little leather book of songs into Arya's pack. Grey Wind paced restlessly on courtyard as convoy rolled out. Robb pressed his brow to the direwolves and whispered for him to guard the sisters. Grey Wind huffed, understanding beyond words, then trotted after carts. Suddenly the city felt emptier. As winter deepened, King's Landing's wounds slowly closed. Markets reopened under Stark banners. Smiths fashioned new coin bearing direwolf on one face, crowned stag on other, symbol of Northstorm accord. Sansa's kitchens kept pots steaming with barley and dockleaf stew. Even Lannister loyalists crept from hiding to find streets patrolled by fair justice. One cold evening Jaime approached Robb atop shattered Dragon Pit stage. He looked older now, golden hair dulled, but a certain lightness had entered shoulders. "You kept your word," he said. "City breathes." Robb watched gulls circle burnt dome. Still a carcass beneath, but yes. Jaime hesitated. "I will ride east, escort Cersei's children to Casterly Rock. They're innocent of our sins. Then, perhaps, I take the black as penance." Robb eyed him, remembering Bran's fall, Ned's death. Yet war had twisted all. "The wall needs swords," he said finally. "Ride north after you see them safe. Tell Lord Commander Stark will pardon if you hold the Shadow Gate." Jaime's breath clouded air. That might be hardest road, but perhaps the one left. He extended hand. Robb clasped it, cool leather to warm flesh. Spring whispered faint promises, though no buds yet dared. Word reached city. Euron Greyjoy sacked Old Town, citadel aflame. Many maesters fled north by sea. Golden Company remnants skirmished Reach, and across Narrow Sea, Daenerys Targaryen had indeed landed at Pentos with armies of Unsullied. Dragons now larger than war horses cast shadows over Guise and Volantis. She proclaimed desire to break the wheel, free slaves, and reclaim Westeros. Yet first she sought alliance with any who honored justice. Robb reread missive brought by merchant galley. He stood with Sansa upon ramparts above city where early snowflakes whirled. "A dragon queen may see value in a wolf realm that spares small folk," he mused. Sansa's breath steamed. "Or she may roast all because ancestors knelt late." Robb half smiled. "Then I must teach her northern courtesy." He looked northward, vision-piercing leagues to ragged wall where stormlight flickered blue. Somewhere there marched Great Jon and Arya and Stannis and the last hope of living. Somewhere there winter's jaws gnashed. He lifted face to falling snow, first true snow of season. Flakes melted on scars of his brow, cold kiss reminding him he was flesh, not iron. Around, bells tolled, not alarm, but evening call. Fires crackled, hearth smells drifted. Below, in yard children chased each other in wonder of white. King's Landing, city of blood and flame, tasted innocence for a breath. Robb whispered a vow into snowfall. To guard this fragile spark until spring or death. To ride north when banners must. To face night with flame of honor. No throne, no crown. Only pack and realm and the far, far memory of a boy in Winterfell's courtyard dreaming of summer wolves. The first true snow came to King's Landing in tentative whispers, salt-washed flakes that melted on broken cobbles, turning alleys to skeins of pearlescent mud. The Southern-born swore they had never seen its like, gazing skyward as if feathered ghosts drifted among the turrets. But to the Northerners the fall felt thin and brittle, a teasing prelude to the real storms massing far beyond the neck. Still, the white hush softened charred walls and cloaked the stink of battle. Candles flickered behind shuttered panes, and for the first time since dragons ruled, the city seemed wrapped in brief, mournful peace. Robb Stark used that hush. He walked the capital each dawn in simple cloak and steel, gray wind padding beside like living shadow. Through flea-bottomed skeletal lanes he moved, smoke curling from hearth pits where stew of onion and sparrow bones simmered. Children peered from door archways, half curious, half afraid. Some reached to touch the direwolf's flank before scampering away giggling. Robb answered each uncertain bow with steady nod. He spoke to cobblers about leather shipments from Tumbleton, to washerwomen who soaked blood from ragged banners, to septons patching cracked altars with mortar ground from dragon pit rubble. He learned their voices, hoarse with soot, edged with hope. While maesters drafted charters and lords haggled grain, Robb soaked himself in the city's pulse, storing its cadence like drumbeat for the long march north. Sansa followed on some mornings, cloak hooded, listening more than speaking. Where Robb offered steadying presence, she offered gentle correction. A word of High Valyrian to a coppersmith named for dragons. A reminder to tanners that bark for curing hides could be had cheaper from Willow Ridge than from scarce northern oak. People, Robb saw, were beginning to look at her with an expression he had not witnessed since childhood in Winterfell. Trust. Fit her like new armor. Only when they climbed steep streets toward the Red Keep did the weight return to her shoulders. Behind those walls still lay echoes of fear. Arya was gone. Days stretched into weeks since her convoy. Dragonglass and wool under Grey Wind's watch, rolled through King's Gate and vanished across the Rose Road. Letters arrived sporadically by Raven. A sketch of a frozen bridge over Queen's Crown Moat. A short report of trolls, perhaps giants, glimpsed at dusk. Once a crude drawing of Grey Wind covered in blowing snow, captioned, "Still keeps your sisters safe." Every letter ended the same, The pack survives. Robb kept each by his bedside beside the wooden wolf charm. Cersei's trial consumed the capital's gossip. The Faith brought 7 high septons across half-ruined countryside, escorted by Tyrell spears who longed to quench grievances with roses not swords. In candlelit corridors, wine merchants bet on verdicts, while whispers claimed Qyburn had vanished from dungeon cell, leaving only bloody chains and a bruise of soot on stone. Jaime, meanwhile, prepared for his journey west with Tommen and the Tyrell cousins. He wandered the keep in pensive silence, pausing often before cracked murals of Targaryen conquest. Once Robb found him caressing the faded outline of Rhaegar's ruby-speckled armor, eyes distant. "Did you ever duel him?" Robb asked softly. Jaime did not startle. "We trained once in the yard. He moved like water, quicksilver, but pride cuts deeper than any sword." He turned, the weight of undone years bending his shoulders. "Guard your humility, Stark. Victory can hollow quicker than defeat." Robb stored the lesson. Winter's edge sharpened. On the last day of the moon, a scout from Maidenpool arrived ragged, bringing tidings that would shatter the hush. Tywin Lannister had died. His body was found in a supply tent near Sweetport Sound, throat neatly slit, sign of quiet blade. Golden Company captains claimed a Sellsword spat over Lion debt. Others murmured of Cersei's last dagger reaching farther than chains allowed. Whatever truth, the Lion had fallen at last. The War Council gathered within the Great Hall. Still roofless, snow dust drifting across lion-wrought floor tiles, and weighed new shape of realm. With Tywin dead, Casterly Rock may crumble into fractious kin, Brynden observed, tracing finger along map. Davin Lannister holds command, but his camp near Crakehall is thin on coin. Their treasury traveled with Tywin's baggage and vanished. "Bandits," Great John grunted, eyes bright. "Or perhaps Ironborn." Davos shook head. Old Town's torch burned courtesy of Euron Greyjoy, but reports say he sails west again. Some think he hunts dragons across Summer Sea. "Then dragons may hunt him." Sansa's voice lifted, calm. All eyes turned. She indicated a fleet drawn in faint ink-off lists. "If Daenerys Targaryen brings her fire east, the Reach will plead for alliance before smoke chokes their vineyards. We could anchor stability by sending envoy now." Melisandre, seldom at these councils now that she rode with Stannis, had left parchment of prophecy. The song of ice meets breath of flame. Few trusted riddles, but Davos risked reading them in strategies. Robb listened. "My place is north," he affirmed at last. "But a lord may sail east in my stead. Someone who knows dragons and gold both." Eyes shifted to Tyrion's empty seat, still missing since he fled unknown. To Davos, whose smuggler sails had tasted Essosi waters. To Sansa, once betrothed to Joffrey yet forging new identity. Finally gaze landed on Brienne of Tarth. Tall as birch, stalwart, little touched by politics yet carrying Renly's ghost. She shook head. "I serve Lady Sansa's guard." Robb nodded grim. "The matter waits." That afternoon Maester Tymond released a raven meant for White Harbor, scroll bound with direwolf wax. Summons for Lord Wyman to dispatch an embassy of merchants to Pentos under safe direwolf seal. Coins spoke as keen as swords. Though ships risked storms and Euron's lurking masts, Wyman's greed for trade routes would test fate. Robb appended personal line to the letter. "Speak to the mother of dragons of small folk spared, not thrones claimed. Let her find allies in justice." Cersei's trial unfolded midwinter under the fractured arches of the Dragon Pit, chosen because the September of Baelor lay shattered, and to remind all that Dragonfire once judged kings. 7 septons in white, 7 stark justiciars in gray, 7 torches burning through blizzard swirl. The crowd of thousands, small folk, lords, Sellswords, packed the tears silent as bone. Cersei wore modest gown of undyed wool, hair cropped, chains light yet evident. She met their gazes with a brittle smirk, though when Sansa entered to testify her pupils widened. Evidence unfurled. Marjorie's false imprisonment, wildfire caches beneath the September, collusion with Qyburn's necromancy, treasonous letters to Euron promising crown for Blade. Jaime stood witness last, describing her threat to burn the city rather than surrender. His voice cracked only when speaking Tommen's name. Through it all, snow drifted sideways across open roof, melting on fevered torches. Verdict: guilty of kinslaying intent, regicide conspiracy, heresy by wildfire. Yet Robb intervened before scream for blood could rise. He proposed exile to the Silent Sisters, vow of silence, labor among bones, far from scheming tongues. High Septon agreed. Crowd murmured. It was mercy difficult to swallow, but northern justice knew cycles of revenge rotted souls. Cersei's smirk fractured. Still, she nodded, accepting. Some said relief flickered. Her voice smothered, yet heart perhaps spared more cruelty. With that sentence, an era ended. Gold cloak insignia melted from thresholds. Queen's bloodline dispersed. Jaime, true to vow, departed with Tommen and handful of orphan Tyrell pages. He would cross Westerlands unclaimed by war, deliver Boy to his mother's seat at Casterly Rock now ruled by Kevan's widow, then ride north as promised. Grey wind trotted by gates to see them off, sniffing Boy's tear-stained hand, accepting pat before turning back. Then came the letter that shattered stillness. To the king in the north and Lord Protector of the Trident. Shivering sea full moon, year 305. Castle black besieged. Night unending. Hardhome refugees turned White's assault shadow gate nightly. Our stores dwindle. Stannis fell wounded at Gorge Crossing but lives. Arya Stark fights like Direcat, yet numbers grow. Send dragonglass and men or we perish. Light grows cold. J.S. The wax bore imprint of a dire wolf scratched hastily, unformed. Robb read it thrice, each repetition coiling tension deeper. Jon Snow, thought dead by many, yet living as Lord Commander, or near enough to sign with initials. The raven's talon marks tore parchment edges, as if bird fought storms unnatural. Maesters urged caution, could be trap, but Robb sensed brother's voice in scrawled brevity. He paced solar floor until dawn, assembling answer alone. War here eased. Grain convoys steadied. Tyrell envoys soon. King's Landing could govern itself under council. Sansa as Lady Regent with Brynden and Davos as swords. He would ride north, no more delay. At sunrise courtyard filled with hush as Robb announced departure. Great John exhaled fog of expletive then grinned savage, pledging axes. Meege Mormont slammed gauntlet to chest, vow to guard Queen Sansa. Brienne volunteered to accompany Robb, but Sansa pressed her to remain Blade of Regent. Instead, Robb chose Gendry, now knighted in Stannis' decree, as master smith and guide across war-broken King's Road. 5,000 hardened Northmen, 2,000 Tully pikemen, 1,000 Stormlander spears under Ser Roland Storm. The column would carry dragonglass reserves and new field forges. Grey wind, restless for snows, leapt at chance, barking wild. Before departure, Sansa led Robb to Sept ruins where charred statue of the mother still loomed. She slipped a ring onto his finger, silver direwolf biting its tail. "So you remember Circle of Pack," she said. Her hand lingered. He clasped it, forehead touching hers. "Keep them fed," he whispered. She smiled, eyes shining but unwept. They parted. Robb rode from city under swirling snow and thousand eyes of watchful populace. The direwolf banner faded between broken towers, and Sansa's heart seemed to tug north with it. Yet she turned to tasks: grain, sewers, law, hearts. Forge of realm no less deadly than battlefield. 3 weeks' ride north proved harsher than any war-worn road Robb had known. Blizzards rolled off mountains of the moon far south of their usual range, drifts burying milestones chest-high. Villages stood abandoned, livestock slain for meat, tracks of something large and clawed pressed into new snows. At Trident's Forks they met Galbart Glover's survivors, skin blue with cold, arrows nearly spent. They told of wights pouring from the shivering forest, giants with eyes like moonlit lakes, and a night queen perched atop horned elk casting frost. Robb shivered, memories of Nan's tales stirring. They reached Moat Cailin in biting gale. The causeway's towers, once held by Ironborn, now manned by Manderly crossbows. Lord Wyman himself, fleshier than ever, wrapped in whale fur, awaited clutching dispatches. Dragons crossing narrow sea, Pentoshi fleet with unsullied anchored at Broken Arm of Dorne, sending envoys north. Robb scanned letters, among them one sealed with three-headed dragon. To the wolf who saved small folk, your deeds cross oceans swifter than sails. Westeros bleeds, and I seek healers not butchers. Meet me at White Harbor come new moon under flag of truce. We share common enemy of night. Daenerys Stormborn, queen of the Undulls and mother of dragons. Robb exhaled steam. Alliance of fire and ice manifested by prophecy. Yet Castle Black required aid now. He penned reply, entrusting Raven to Wyman. White Harbor will host your grace as friend. I march to hold darkness at bay. Pray we both arrive in time. He ordered Manderley to ready docks for dragons, whatever that meant. North of the neck, winter bit deepest. Wolves followed column at distance, eyes glinting between fir trunks, as if kin of gray wind monitored march. At Queen's Crown ruins they found Arya's camp. Burned wagons, but dragonglass delivered northward already. She left trail of inverted wolf paw prints pointing direction. Robb found piece of parchment tacked to gallows tree. Come quickly. The wall cracks. His fist tightened. 3 nights later sky erupted with green aurora swirling like silk banners. A phenomenon maesters called night fires, only in deep winter. Men muttered omens. Robb spurred pace. When first sighted the wall, dawn barely touched horizon. The colossal ice rampart gleamed sickly blue, its top line not straight but sagging as if melted in sections. Black plumes rose from Castle Black's chimneys in distress. South of Shadow Tower, fields crawled with dark shapes. As column approached, those shapes resolved into whites thousands. Milling in uneasy ring around Keep's outer palisade. Held at bay by trench fires and scorpions manned by ragged black brothers, Northmen, Stormlanders, wildlings alike. Strange rainbow of allies. Robb led vanguard straight into Frey. Horn of winter? No time. Karstark archers loosed flaming arrow volley. Burning gaps. Great John roared as umber axes carved swathes. Gray wind tore throats that carried no blood, scattering bones. Snow churned crimson and black. Behind lines, Gendry's mobile forges heated dragonglass-dipped spears. Smiths ran them to front where each thrust felled 2 whites. Inside curtain, Robb found Jon Snow upon rampart. Face leaner, eyes shadow-bruised, hair dusted silver by frost. They embraced brief, brothers bound by blood and burden. Jon's voice husked. Stannis holds Shadow Tower but lost half host at Frostfang Pass. Melisandre claims Dawnfire ritual needed. I trust swords more. He pointed. Eastwatch's beacon flickered faintly. Storms lashed coastline. Dead still approached there. Strategy forged swiftly. Robb's fresh troops would relieve Castle Black, allowing exhausted rangers to ride west to aid Stannis. Meanwhile, a daring sortie north of Wall would attempt to destroy white summoners. Skin-changing children rumored to ride giant elk. Arya, already volunteering, would join ghosting party with wildling spearwives. Sansa's ring glinted on Robb's glove as he signed orders. Night came early. Beneath aurora glow, Robb walked along Wall's base, palm against ice slick. He felt hum, an ancient magic cracking. In distant silence came echoing horn blast, not Night's watch code, but deeper, resonant. Tormund Giant's bane, massive red-beard hoarfrost, muttered. They call wind to break door of world. Robb considered dragons. Flame might fuse cracks by time, yet dragons belonged to woman he'd never met. Dawn assault northward began. Arya led advance through knockdown gate panel long whites charred to ash. Beyond, haunted forest floor lay crunchy with rime. Snowflakes big as feathers fell. Jon, Robb, Tormund, and a cadre of free folk ghosted behind. They moved swift, breathing mist, until found clearing lit by pale blue fire swirling around ring of weirwood stumps. Atop elk horned like branches sat woman figure, skin alabaster, hair frosted. At her feet kneeled whites awaiting command. Robb raised hand. Archers drew dragonglass arrows. In heartbeat clearing erupted, blue flame hissed into icy spears. Battle joined quiet yet fierce. Arya darted under elk belly, slash at tendons. Beast screamed, antlers gouging air. Robb's sword bit through white ribcage. His ring caught eerie glow. Jon met the Night Queen's eyes, same color as heaven's, and for moment time froze. She whispered in tongue unhuman, sorrow like cracking glacier. Jon thrust dragonglass dagger into her breast. Light burst white, whites collapsed boneless. Forest fell silent but for elk's dying breath. Night Queen's body melted to rime, leaving shards of crystal. Robb collected one cold-burning palm. Not victory, he murmured. Only breathing space. They returned to wall at twilight. Fires on rampart burned brighter. White army faltered without Queen's will, scattering into pines. Yet clouds above coiled dark, promising worse. Within mess hall, Stannis lay on cot, bandaged by Gilly. He nodded as Robb entered. "You hold line," he said quiet. "But winter not done." Eastwatch cries. Robb clasped his forearm. "We'll ride east at dawn." That night, Jon and Robb spoke atop wall. Gray Wind and Ghost sat side by side, eyes fixed north. Robb recounted Queen's message. Jon listened, then faced distant horizon where faint flicker of dragonfire perhaps could be seen. "Ice alone cannot win," he said, "nor fire alone. Both must bend." Robb touched Wolf Ring. "Then we teach bending." In White Harbor, Daenerys Targaryen disembarked under storm-lead skies, dragons circling above frosted waves. She expected to meet lords desperate for crown's favor. Instead, she found Bruised City welcoming small folk by name, grain barges sailing south to strangers, and towers draped with silver direwolf who had spared former enemies. When Lord Wyman introduced envoys praising Wolf King's justice, her curiosity glinted. She asked for meeting inside Merman's Hall warmed by whale oil braziers. There, across carved weirwood table, she met Sansa Stark, red hair braided with snowberry, eyes clear as winter sky. Together they spoke of night armies and hungry children, of wheel that crushes. Sansa offered Olive Branch, harbor for dragons, passage north. Daenerys offered flame against dead. Ravens flew. Amid blinding blizzard atop the wall, Robb unfolded parchment bearing Dragon's seal and Sansa's steady hand. "Dragon Queen comes as ally. Hold until we arrive. The pack grows." Robb smiled through cracked lips. Snow whipped but hope tasted warm. He turned to men huddling near fire trenches, raising voice above gale. "Hold fast. Friends ride on wings." Gray Wind lifted snout, howling long into storm, echoed by Ghost and dozens of northern wolves answering from forest gloom. A chorus that carried across ice and ruined kingdoms, over shattered keeps and simmering cities, to distant seas where dragons beat crimson wings. And in that sound lay promise, not of easy peace or swift victory, but of pack unbroken, of dawn forging from winter's steel, of story still unwritten by blood alone. Snow scoured the ramparts all night, chiseling every stone of Castle Black into ghost-white sculptures. But the dawn broke steel blue and windless, as though the storm had sucked the breath from the world and left a vacuum in its wake. Robb Stark did not wait for full light before descending from the wall. Frost crackled beneath his boots the way dry tinder crackles under the first licking flames, and every breath burned his lungs. Around him the fort stirred back to life, rangy crows flapping from ice-sheened merlins, black brothers unkinking stiff fingers while muttering half-hearted jests, wildling spearwives stamping feet to revive numb toes. Someone coaxed a horn from its rest and blew a wobbling note that fell flat in frozen air, more a cough than warning. What strength the garrison possessed had drained through too many nights of siege and too much death. They clung now to habit and brittle discipline. Jon was waiting in the yard below. Pale morning softened the hard lines carved around his eyes, but not the weariness in them, a weariness Robb understood in his own bones. The brothers had called council in the map room of the King's Tower, and the men who attended wore scraps of half a dozen banners. The black and gray of the Night's Watch, the dire wolf with a bite taken from its tail, the flayed man bound into a ragged armband reclaimed from a corpse, the fiery heart of Walder repurposed as scarf, the red and green stripes of some half-remembered umbers. All fought beneath a single necessity now. Even quarrelsome raider chiefs sat shoulder to shoulder with sworn brothers, cheeks pricked by ash where they had painted direwolf paw prints in defiance of the night. A cracked oaken table dominated the chamber, the top carved with the outline of the wall and the forest beyond, though most of the inlay had long ago been prized out for kindling. Candles guttered in clay saucers atop each old marker, giving the map the flicker of living flame where once sunlight had fallen. Samwell Tarly hovered at the table's edge, quill in hand, ink freezing drop by drop in the inkwell. Lady Meege Mormont stood flanked by her remaining she-bears, arms like wrought iron folded over furs heavy with crusted snow. Great John paced, fists clenching and unclenching with the nervous energy that preceded battle. Tormund Giantsbane occupied the hearthstool, gnawing a slab of salt pork half-thawed by steam that hissed from the pot suspended above the coals. Robb looked across them all, then planted his gloved hands upon the table, frost crystals tumbling free of the wolf's head pauldron. "We march east at dusk," he began without preamble. "Eastwatch signals once every hour by torch, and those torches grow fewer each night. The dead are massing beneath the Frostfang shoulders, cutting off the coastal track. If Eastwatch falls, the ice shelf between it and Hardhome becomes gate and road both, and the night will spill south unchecked. We carry dragonglass and fire, so we press forward while white numbers remain scattered." A murmur rippled. John spoke next, voice hoarse. "Scouts report a new host forming near the gorge. The last giants, enslaved by whatever magic binds the whites. They drive a spindle of ice in a circle, carving trenches that freeze to walls. We cannot risk being trapped between that and the sea. We take the coastal shelf fast and hard, push the dead back into their own trenches, and link with Stannis returning from Shadow Tower. Between our wedge and his, we crush their flank." Sam's quill scratched, feather trembling in the draft. "And if Stannis does not break through, then we hold long enough for dragons," Robb answered. "Their wings beat the air before first thaw. If Daenerys Targaryen keeps her word, flame will arrive. Aye, and if," Great John growled, voice pitched for mock but not quite, "until then it's axes in skulls and glass in hearts." Tormund spat pork fat into fire. "Glass shards bite dead things, but giants, aye, they shrug arrow and blade the same. We'll need more than daggers." Meege planted her heavy mace beside her boot. "Giants are flesh beneath skin. Enough steel and will and they fall." John placed fist on table. "Flesh dies. Possess the heartbone with dragonglass. That is end." Robb watched them settle. Doubt rippled in every face, then hardened into resolve. No other choice. He caught Sam's gaze lingering, a question there. "Speak it." Sam wet his lips. "Lord Commander, your outriders sighted the Night Queen destroyed, yet blue fires dance still in the valleys. If she is dead, who commands the whites? There must be a greater mind." John's breath whitened. "The Night King, perhaps, though none of us ever saw him and lived sane. If he moves, we move faster. Cut the head and let the corpse crumble. Word is the king leads a shattered company west of the gorge. We aim to break to Eastwatch, then turn north and hunt the shadow." Robb flexed glove. "And if we find no king, then we hold the wall anyway," John answered, simple as steel. Preparations hummed through Castle Black like a brittle harp string plucked too hard. Stormlander smiths pulled boilers from the old library and fed them coals until dragonglass tips glowed orange, then quenched in ice slush born of melted snow. The reek of brimstone mingled with the copper tang of frozen blood. Gendry directed teams of apprentices, wildlings who barely knew one end of hammer from other but whose hands learned quick when chill threatened fingers. Dragonglass spearheads cracked at the hafts, so Gendry wrapped tangs in black iron sleeves and riveted them through ash shafts cunningly split and rebound with rawhide. Each new weapon thus gained the bite of volcanic stone and the backbone of steel. By late afternoon racks clattered beneath the weight of 200 fresh lances, a drop in the sea of undead, yet each drop lethal. Near the east gate, Lady Lyanna Mormont drilled her last dozen she-cubs, faces shadowed by helms too large, chained shirts down to knees, axes trimmed for their strength. Their chants rose sharp and high as Merlin cries, defying the bleak beyond the gate. When Robb rode past, Lyanna saluted with axe haft. He returned nod solemn. In her ferocity he saw a mirror of Arya, a spark he would see through night. As dusk bled across clouds, the column mustered 4,000 Northmen and mountain clans, 800 Watch Brothers, 700 wildlings under Tormund, a ragged 100 of Stormlander bowmen led by Ser Roland Storm. They carried torches soaked in tallow, barrels of pitch on sledges, and braziers slung between double teams of shaggy garrons. Grey wind loped, breath steaming. Jon donned the black and gray mantle of his office. Robb clasped forearms, their armor scraping. "May the gods watch," he murmured. "They watch the wall," Jon returned. "But we watch back now." Horns sounded 3 blasts. Departure. Gate chains rattled, frostbitten hinges groaned, and the great oak leaf swung outward into whiteness. The wind beyond smelled of pine smoke and a faint sweetness like distant apples left to freeze on branches. They stepped into snowpack crusted by wind, each footfall a crunching testament. Torches guttered, casting brief halos before darkness swallowed. Behind, the wall glowed faint blue where lantern banks spread thin illusions of safety. They marched through night lit by aurora shimmering pale green curtains overhead. Robb tracked pace at columns 4, visor up so stinging air kept fatigue at bay. Snow devils whirled across their path, scattering powder in eddies that threatened to blur direction. But Tormund's son Torreg's snowmark had carved fetishes into each spruce trunk earlier, small wolf faces pointing east. Following those, they pressed on. Hours stretched, stars wheeling. Once gray wind halted, ears flat, hackles high. Robb raised hand. Column stopped. Ahead, faint crunches, not wind. Jon signaled scouts. Sperling, a lithe free folk woman with piercings in brow, vanished into drifts. Moments later a scream ended abrupt. She reemerged smeared with blackened frost, dragging a corpse that dripped frozen shards. White, once a crow by tattered black. Robb ordered another arrow screen. Archers knocked dragonglass, loosed into darkness. Squeals cut short. They marched again. At moonset a faint orange shimmer rimmed eastern horizon. The fires of Eastwatch still alive. Relief rippled, but as they descended final ridge, shapes coalesced between them and fort. Twisted silhouettes of dead, serried like rusted spears, stretching across entire ice lake, candles of blue fire flickering in skull sockets. A great hollow moan rolled, as though the storm itself exhaled malice. Robb turned to Jon. No words needed. They formed shield wall. Northman center, watch on flanks, wildlings arcs. Torches thrust forward, pitch barrels smashed and ignited to form burning curtains. The dead advanced, shambling first then shifting to lope, silent jaws gaped. At rear of their host lumbered 3 giants chained with sinew cords, ribs exposed, eyes starlit frost. Great Jon bellowed war cry, umber axes rose. Tormund answered with guttural roar. Robb drew sword forged of northern fold, dragonglass edge welded to steel by Gendry's cunning. He stepped beyond firecut and met first wave. Blades sang ghostly note where they bit bone. Each strike left white crumpling to shards that steamed, black smoke swirling. Yet for every corpse felled, 2 pressed near. Lines wavered. Arrows hissed overhead. A giant crashed against shield wall, sweeping log club. Men flew like dolls. Robb ducked behind scorched shield as Great Jon leapt, burying double-bladed axe into giant's knee. The creature roared soundless, collapsed. Spears thrust upward into skull. Dragonglass flashed, and the giant stilled, clouds of bitter frost exploding from mouth. Still whites poured, tide unstoppable. Robb sensed line might buckle when horns blared from Eastwatch, deep and triple-toned. A portcullis slammed open, and out poured garrison. Stannis' heavy spearmen, Ironbank crossbow captains, and Shadow Tower rangers led by Melisandre herself, eyes blazing ruby. Between her palms danced a sphere of scarlet flame like heart plucked hot from chest. She raised it. Tendrils snapped outward, tracing fire sigils across sky. Where sigils fell, ice split as if salted. Whites stumbled, limbs cracking. Gap formed, and Robb's column surged, linking with Stannis's wedge. Encircled whites thrashed, yet their numbers melted under twin assault. By sunrise, only shards remained, lying like obsidian glass across snowfield. The giants' smoldered pillars, slowly collapsing. Men collapsed also, exhausted, bleeding but alive. Jon clasped Robb's shoulder, voice croaking. Wall stands another day. Robb swallowed cold iron taste. One day, Stannis strode up, bandage at temple dark with renewed blood. Eastern fjord choked with corpses, but sea still freezes, he rasped. We buy time, nothing more. He looked skyward where aurora persisted though sun rolled pale. Flame soon or all lost. As if answer, a sonic boom cracked the air, echo rolling across ice. Something vast roared overhead, wind of its passage flattening men's hoods. They looked up to see silhouette of dragon, wingspan blotting cloud, flanked by two smaller equals. Scales shimmered molten scarlet, emerald, midnight black. The beasts banked, screaming challenge, then wheeled south. Hope erupted. Men cheered, some wept. Yet Robb felt tremor of awe tinged with fear. Dragons answered no horns but their own. Salvation or new firestorm. Behind dragons, dozens of sails crested horizon, Pentoshi carracks under three-headed sigils. They slogged through ice floes, breath of steam trailing. Eastwatch's battered harbor bustled. Crews hacked ice, lit beacons to guide dragons. Daenerys Targaryen arrived at midday riding Drogon. Snow powdered her silver hair, but her violet eyes burned unswerving. She dismounted onto plank flung across shattered quay where Lord Wyman, Sansa, and Lady Meege waited garbed for cold. Robb hurried, sword sheathed, to stand before her. For heartbeat there was only silence, dragon wings folding thunderously behind them.
Dane reis met Robb's case, searching.
Then she spoke, voice carrying over water's frozen hush. You are the wolf who spared the city he conquered. And you, Robb answered, our flame come tonight. She smiled faintly. Perhaps we forged dawn. Formalities scarce mattered on frozen brink, yet courtesy guided them to Eastwatch's cracked hall. Fire blazed. Sansa and Dee. Enery spoke first, as host and guest, trading news of Reach unrest, Euron's reavers harrying Hightower, and the possibility of backing by Dorne if dragons spared their ports. Robb listened, weighing. Across Hall Melisandre and Tyrion, newly arrived as Dragon Queen's advisor, exchanged cryptic glances. Tyrion raised wine, quipped, trust a Stark to meet a Targaryen where toes freeze. Good things seldom brew in warmth. Strategy followed. Jon outlined foe, a war mind behind whites, a being older than kingdoms. He unfurled map scorched by candle stub, marking last sight of Night King, west of Frostfangs, near gorge of frozen waterfalls. Daenerys spread her own parchment. Dragonfire arcs, supply runs, chain nets to snare giants. She would ride wings to burn trenches, melt ice roads. Drogon's flame fused cracks faster than corpses could clamber. Two smaller dragons, Regal and Viserion, would guard western flank, guided by Valyrian horn taught by old Valyrians now in exile under her retinue. Robb studied risk. Dragons vulnerable to ice spears wielded by giants or others. We must shield them with arrow storms of fire arrow, blinds enemy line while dragons dive. Every burning pit must be refilled with oil so flame persists. Jon nodded. Rangers will set lures, bonfires on Treeline, dead drawn to heat, leaving others exposed. Tyrion tapped parchment. And Night King, Melisandre's ruby glowed. Shadow cannot stand before true dawnfire, but dawnfire must be kindled by living blood of the pack. Her eyes flicked between Robb, Jon, and Daenerys. 3 heads of dragon, 3 hearts of ice, 3 flames within shadows. Daenerys met the Red Priestess's gaze with more steel than fear. My blood has burned cities. It will burn the dead as well. Robb spoke. Prophecy aside, we fight. If Dawnfire is our ally, so be it. But steel and glass must meet corpse flesh while dragons circle. Thus battle for world's last night set. Across next 2 days, Eastwatch transformed to Forge of Chaos. Dragonsmiths hammered iron harnesses to carry barrels of wildfire under Drogon's belly. Gendry collaborated, designing bracers to release with lever tug by Queen's Boot. Northmen built sled trenches laced with pitch. Wildlings fletched arrows with ice-eagle quills dipped in lamp oil. Ghost and Grey Wind prowled perimeter, their howls twin warnings. Night before assault, Robb wandered to Curtain Wall where Daenerys stood cloaked in white fur, braids whipping wind. Drogon roosted above, scenting stars. Robb halted beside, watching moonlight silver her cheek. "Fear visits," she said quietly. "Fear keeps blade sharp." She smiled rueful. "So they say, but fear also tempts fire to consume all." Robb studied flame flickering from Watchtower. "You spared King's Landing when wildfire might have cleared path. I trust your flame knows friend from foe." She turned, eyes searching. "Do you?" "I trust your heart for small folk," he answered. "They speak of you as breaker of chains. Break these chains, and Wolf will guard your realm." Wind caught her cloak, pressing it around armor of light leather over scaled steel. She drew close, voice almost lost. "After night, dawn will need a banner. Fire and ice, unlikely bedfellows. Yet dawn is forged by cold meeting light." She nodded, stepping back. "Then let us forge it." They parted without further words, understanding sealed. Dawn broke thin, no colors, only gray like soapstone. The assault began before full light. Rangers fanned through tree line, igniting pitch piles. Smoke coiled. Jon rode at vanguard, Longclaw shimmering. Robb held center, Greatjon at right, Tormund at left. Behind, dragons took sky. The first roar shook marrow, Drogon diving, wildfire belly harness sparking green blossoms across white phalanx. Snow vaporized, leaving glass-slick crater. Regal swooped, spilling ordinary flame, clearing lanes. Viserion banked, tail slicing air. Others responded, chilling air into spear gusts that turned flame to drifting shards. A monstrous figure on ice elk emerged, Night King or one of his lieutenants. Spear of ice in hand. Drogon veered. Ice spear sailed, missed but clipped harness. A wildfire barrel snapped free, plunged, exploded among whites. Robb saw chance. He signaled arrow storm. Flaming shafts arced, forming curtain that obscured Night King. In its ember rain, Tormund's wildlings surged, hurling obsidian javelins. One struck elk, creature shrieked, rearing. Night King dismounted, gliding across snow as though weightless. Jon charged alone. The two collided, ice blade versus Valyrian steel. Sparks of frost and shadow flew. Robb's line collapsed inward, hacking wights who sought to aid master. Meege barreled to Jon's side, mace shattering skeletal arms. Night King parried both, each blow chilling steel until hilts froze to gloves. From above, Drogon roared frustration. Daenerys steered into dive. Grey Wind cut path, fangs tearing whites, cleared circle. Robb sprinted into ring. Night King turned hollow gaze, the absence of color more than blue. For moment 3 rulers faced. Wolf, dragon, shadow. Night King lifted arms. Storm clouds imploded downward, snow swirling. Visibility vanished. Robb felt blade meet no resistance, heard dragons shriek. Cold like space-crushed lungs. Then heat blossomed at feet. Sigil of flame scorched into snow where Melisandre knelt chanting behind. Dawnfire. The ring of glyphs flared, pushing storm back. Night King hissed soundless. Robb lunged, sword piercing through glyphlit air. Steel met ancient armor that cracked. Jon struck simultaneously with Longclaw from opposite side. Daenerys, on foot now, slammed dragonglass spears straight through shadow chest, twisting. Shards of ice exploded outward. Night King froze mid-breath, cracks spidering across form. Within, blue light pulsed then blinked. The figure shattered into snow dust propelled outward. Whites beyond collapsed like dropped marionettes. a silence fuller than any cathedral's filled clearing. Then, simultaneous, a roar of triumph rattled frost-brittle trees. Dragons shrieked skyward. Men and women, Northmen and free folk, Night's Watch, knelt or hugged or screamed. Some wept. Robb stood trembling, point of sword buried in rime. A gust lifted pulverized fragments of Night King into air, scattering over battlefield glimmering like crushed diamonds. Frost burned his wound where shard nicked brow, yet he smiled. Jon leaned on Longclaw, chest heaving. It is done. Disbelief-laced words. Daenerys wiped spear on cloak's hemless edge. Done? Or beginning of new tale? Robb met her gaze. Dawn broke at last. Sun disk rising blood orange above distant frost peaks. Rays catching dragons' wings to ignite them in bronze fire. Snowflakes refracted light into halos. He sheathed sword. Beginning, he said, because winter ends only to feed spring. We'll need to heal a realm torn by flame and ice both. Grachan's bellow broke reverie. We live! Feast! Laughter rolled. Tormund slapped Robb's back so hard armor rang. Told you giants fall. Robb chuckled, breath clouding. Thanks to your axes. Meej knelt by fallen she-bear sister, hand over still chest. She rose, studying dawn. They died for dawn. Let's make dawn worth it. They returned to wall that evening beneath aurora of gold and violet, colors once unseen. Fires lit along ice rampart in celebration, no longer defense. Ravens flurried south bearing tidings. Night King shattered, White's dead weight, world spared. Across realm farmers would learn by thaw that winter's darkest threat had passed. In Eastwatch's ruined great hall, tables groaned under last of salted pork, barrels of mead, and wildling stews unidentifiable yet savory. Dragons lay curled on ice shore purring thunderous contentment, steam rising from nostrils into starlight. Robb sat between Sansa, cheeks flushed with pride, and Daenerys, eyes reflecting fire. Jon spoke with Sam about new oaths for free folk sworn to help rebuild Watch. Tyrion bargained with Wyman over harbor fees and dragon dung fertilizer patents. Melisandre stood at entrance, silent, ruby dim but intact. Great Jon called for song. Tormund answered with bawdy ballad. Arya joined midverse, sliding into hall like snow wraith, cloak fluttering. She had scouted to be certain all corpses lay dead truly. Now she brandished bag of ice shards shaped like twisted antlers. Souvenir, she grinned, tossing to Robb. He placed them in bowl. They rattled like chimes. Hours later, as revel died, Robb slipped outside. Night sky dazzled with stars unobscured by storm. The wall loomed behind, cracks glistening but stable. He walked to parapet where dragon's heat had melted a smooth pool reflecting aurora. There Daenerys waited, cloak about shoulders. They speak of peace now, she murmured. Peace needs forging like sword, he answered. She turned to him, face lit by shifting green ribbons. Will wolves and dragons forge together? I hope so. Ice tempered by fire makes steel of dawn. She smiled, extending hand. He took it. Fingers cold at first, warmed. Behind them gray wind chuffed approval. Far off, faint horns sounded. Stannis' men signaling patrol of safety. The realm's wounds immense, yet hearts beat. Robb looked at horizon where for first time in months pale pink halo heralded sun unfiltered by blizzard. 5 hours ago the world balanced on blade, he whispered. And 5 hours from now? Daenerys asked. He squeezed her hand. We begin rebuilding. No subtitles, no chapters, only the long script of living. Aurora brightened as though agreeing, curling above dragons who hummed deep lullaby. And in that hush of newborn spring, Robb Stark breathed free, the dire wolf within him quiet but vigilant, ready to guide a realm from night into dawn. The light of the first full day after the shattering of the Night King came thin and gold, glimmering across the black waters of the shivering sea as though some celestial hand had spilled molten metal upon the horizon. It was a dawn very few men of Westeros had ever seen. Clean, unmarred by the heavy, frost-laden clouds that had draped the north for more moons than any could easily count. In its soft hush, Eastwatch by the sea breathed like an exhausted lung finally drawing deep. Broken crenellations glittered beneath soft rime, and a faint scent of salt mingled with the lingering smoke of victory fires that smoldered in every courtyard brazier. Robb Stark stood upon the eastern parapet, one hand resting upon the newly lanced butt of his dragonglass-forged sword, the other cradling a stone cup of broth that had gone cold in his grasp. His knuckles bore faint lines of frostbite, and the makeshift bandage at his brow itched where the Night King's splinter had grazed him, but he barely felt any of it. Below, the battered host that had marched from every corner of the realm reformed itself into something new. Northmen and Stormlanders haggled over barrel staves. Wildlings bartered fox pelts for barley cakes. Night's Watch black cloaks quoted the oath to young freefolk lads who had seen enough to choose the wall as their home without prompting. Over this unlikely congress, gray wind prowled with tail held high, stopping now and again to nose at an injured man as though counting the living. Daenerys Targaryen joined him, quiet as a drifting snowflake despite the fine steel scale armor she wore beneath her fur cloak. Her silver-white hair was loose save for a single braid trailing behind her right ear, and the wind caught it, blowing strands across her face until she tucked them back. She had discarded the crown she had landed with. The heavy circlet rested somewhere in a keepsake chest near the warmest hearth. A dragon queen did not require metal to remind anyone of her station, not when three-winged titans roost beyond the wall's lip, casting monstrous shadows upon the ice below. He did not turn because he had felt her approach as one senses an approaching storm in their bones. She set her hand upon the parapet so that their knuckles almost touched. "I never imagined I would see such a dawn," she said. Her voice was raw. She had screamed Drogon's name into the wind for hours, guiding flame and fury like a conductor's baton. "Nor I," Robb answered. Somewhere below, a hammer struck a bent scythe back into shape, the ringing report echoing up the stone. "The last time I glimpsed the sun without a bloody halo, I was a boy chasing Bran along the battlements of Winterfell." She studied him obliquely. "We carry sunrise differently, I think. You cup it like a secret. My people call it from the heavens with fire." She paused, tasting another thought. "Yet it shines either way," he answered with a small, sidelong smile. "The gods care little for crowns, only for what is burned or buried." Behind them, the wind shifted, bringing the heavy, wet scent of thaw. Muck would rise from snow-packed lanes soon, and with it pestilence if they did not clear ice gutters in time. Before noon, Jon had requested 300 able hands for just that task. The realm's war against the dead was over. Its war against winter's consequences had begun. Daenerys regarded the armies below, their mismatched shields, the bloody linen flapping from splints, the pale corpses lined on planks awaiting pyres. "I have no maps for peace," she said, voice nearly lost to the hiss of distant waves. "Dragons make short work of war, but peace is forged by smaller hammers." "Peace is forged," Robb echoed, "in kitchens and councils and 1,000 small mercies. There are bright minds for that. Sansa in White Harbor, Tyrion with his ledgers, Davos with his common sense. We need not do it alone." He glanced sideways. "But we must give it shape." She met his gaze fully, and in her eyes he saw not the queen the realm feared but a woman who had survived the slave pits of Meereen and the loneliness of deserts, a woman whose flames had consumed countless tyrants, now confronted with the prospect of planting gardens in the burn-scorched soil. He wondered what it would mean for a direwolf and a dragon to dig irrigation ditches side by side. Footsteps scuffed behind them. Jon Snow emerged, still clad in the patched blacks of the Watch, though a direwolf brooch glinted at his throat. He carried 2 wax-sealed scrolls. Melisandre drifted after him like a crimson shadow, her ruby pulsing faintly in the new sunlight. She wore no furs. Cold seemed to shun her skin. "The ravens have returned," Jon announced, handing one scroll to Robb, the other to Daenerys. "Tyrion's raven from White Harbor, and one from Lord Wyman himself." He rubbed exhaustion from his face, leaving a smear of soot. "Stormlanders in the Riverlands have bent the knee to your regency, sister. No blood spilled, Brienne's name carries weight. and the Reach has sent envoys to Pentos to parley with Grey Worm about grain shipments. Then the wheel tilts, Melisandre murmured. She moved to the parapet, gazing north where the ice plains stretched to the world's edge. You have slain a shadow, but not the darkness that bore it. On the day the last red leaf falls from the last weirwood, the night will rise again, unless dawn takes root in the hearts of men. She turned, eyes gleaming. Will the wolf and the dragon plant that seed? Jon exhaled a white plume. We will, unless bickering rights and titles uproot it first. He looked to Robb. Your regency in the south steadies lords but frightens them too. Tyrells whisper old fears. The north secedes, the dragons burn them next. I will not play Ares. Daenerys bristled but softened. Nor will I claim a throne without consent. Robb studied the horizon where dragons lazed on ice like cats on stone hearths, wings draped. Let each realm choose its fealty freely. If the north remains sovereign, so be it. If the south wishes its queen, let them voice. But all must bind to one law. No king may raise the dead. No queen may forge wildfire under sacred roofs. He smiled wry. Perhaps we call it the Dawn Accords. Melisandre's ruby flared, then dimmed, as though endorsing. Jon half smiled. We'll need scribes. We'll need roads first, Robb countered. And seed grain. And lords who remember what loyalty is when the wind's not biting their arses. Daenerys folded her scroll. Then we start. I sail to White Harbor with Drogon tonight. Regal stays to shadow the wall. Viserion escorts caravans along the King's Road. Robb opened his own scroll, Tyrion's cramped script unfurling. He read quickly. Sansa reports Southron spies sniffing for fractures among our allies. She wants me in White Harbor before spring's first melt. He sighed. But Eastwatch still stands by thread, Jon. You need more hands. We'll rebuild ramparts, refit the Shadow Tower, and open the Night Fort as South Garrison, Jon said. Stay a fortnight, then ride south with Mormont's spears. The wall must be manned by those who choose, not those pressed. Daenerys accepted this by nod. I'll keep the Queen's men close until treaty's written. When I return, I come not as conqueror but guest. They sealed the pact with palms laid atop stone. Wolf, dragon, crow, and red witch. Overhead, the aurora shimmered in pale ribbons turning rose as the sun climbed higher. 2 days later, Dragonstone-born carpenters hammered planks over Eastwatch's sundered watch turret, while out beyond the tide line great blocks of ice sloughed from the shore and drifted seaward like a funeral flotilla for the Night King. Robb spent those days walking the triage tents, speaking names into memory. Maester Thorin, who braved storm to spread honey salve upon arrow burns. Scylla of Hardhome, who had seen her children rise against her yet found new family in the watch. Ser Roland Storm, his bow arm shattered but singing bawdy lyrics while a maester reset bone. Young PYP, who joked of his missing ear as though he loaned it to a raven and forgot to ask it back. For each he promised compensation in grain or coin, whatever the new realm could muster. On the third night, when Daenerys lifted skyward upon Drogon's back, hundreds lined the ice shore with torches, wave after wave of warm light sweeping outward as far as torch stock allowed. Drogon soared above flame-lit sea spray, trailing sparks in his wake. His reflection shimmered upon the dark glass of night waves, a comet of living fire pointing toward the southern world. Robb watched until dragon silhouette merged with distant stars, then turned to gray wind, scratching behind ear. To White Harbor, old friend, he murmured, thinking of Sansa and quills scratching parchment and of Tyrion raising yet another goblet. Thinking of his mother's bones buried under Winterfell's weeping giant's tears. Thinking of Targaryen sails and Tyrell silks and Dorne's desert roses blossoming in the snows of New Alliance. Spring's first thaw came late that year. It began not in the south, but along the wall, where war-warm dragons stretched upon ice and melted fissures that became rivulets, then brooklets. Icicles dripped into the shivering sea, and the sound was like chimes rung by unseen hands. Crevasses closed where flame had fused them, forming crystal windows within the wall's thickness. Birds nested once more in the dead century's arrow slits, and their twittering carried through the hollow interior steps. Jon Snow strode those steps daily. One dawn he found Melisandre waiting on the 7th landing, gazing into a pane of fused ice. Her reflection shimmered within like a ghost behind glass. She touched the frozen surface. The ruby at her throat pulsed. "Your fires fade," Jon observed. "They are not mine," she corrected softly. "I am but a candle, my lord, wax and wic. Kate, nothing more. The god's flame burns in the hearts of men, if it burns anywhere at all." Her eyes tracked a distant flight of ravens winging south. When dawn comes, a candle wanes. Jon studied her face, lines of agony and purpose interwoven. "You have served your god," he said. "Perhaps now you serve yourself. Stay, teach the watch of cold and flame." She smiled, sorrowful. "A shadow lingered in my veins, and that debt is paid. I must walk into sunrise while I still may." She bowed, scarlet silk brushing ice. "Yet I leave you one gift." She pressed a small vial into Jon's hand. Inside, 3 slivers of opaque white stone shaped like thorn tips. "Dragon bone from Shadow's heart. Plant them beneath the weirwood south of the wall. Their roots will remember flame." Her steps whispered away. The ruby glowed once, then died. By next sunrise she was gone from Eastwatch, and though Jon would search, no tracks led beyond the gate, and no ship departed the harbor. She had melted into dawn like frost on warm stone. Robb remained 13 days. During that time he oversaw rebuilding of Eastwatch's outer palisade and the digging of new latrine pits to keep melted runoff from fouling fresh water. He rode patrols with Tormund, mapping haunted forest glades now silent. In one clearing they found rags of white armor and footprints leading nowhere. In another they discovered a grove of young weirwoods uprooted by the giant's chains, their leaves blackened. Robb ordered saplings replanted upright, though he knew most would die. Yet planting them felt an act of stubborn hope. He learned the names of every ranger still breathing. He buried those whose names he could no longer learn. One cold dusk he found himself alone at a cairn of unmarked stones, his breath pluming. He knelt, pressing a hand against the icy cairn side, and closed his eyes, whispering the stark words. "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies but the pack survives." Gray wind pressed warm body to his shoulder, as if sealing vow. On the 14th morning, before first light, horns sounded one low note, departure. A column assembled. 400 Stark cavalry, 600 Manderly spears fresh arrived by sea, the surviving she-bears under Lady Meege, and a host of wildlings choosing southern promises. Jon insisted Tormund accompany them as envoy, though Tormund claimed cities stank worse than mammoth pits. Still he accepted. Then giants, now freed of the Night King's thrall, sent token of 2 towering youths carrying hammers of stone. They marched for White Harbor first, then south to Winterfell where great council would gather. Jon and Robb clasped arms at parting. "The watch is yours," Robb told him. Jon shook his head. "The world is ours to guard together." "The world," Robb repeated, smiling grim. "Big damn kennel." They laughed then, young again for heartbeat. Gray wind nosed ghost goodbye. The albino direwolf whined low. Then hooves turned south. Louis Piper marched under Tully Trout. Ser Roland Storm bore Stannis' fiery stag bound to new white sun. She-bears roared war songs while snow ghosts glided overhead. The King's Road lay in ruin still, ravaged by storms, clogged with bones of deserters turned whites. But spring thaw would make it passable. They would rebuild it with stone and sweat, as they would rebuild Realm. White Harbor's Grand Harbor had never seen such vessels. 3 dragons roost atop seawall towers, necks curved like scythes, tails draped into the courtyards below. Pentoshi carracks, Volantene war galleys, Manderly wool barges, northern longships, vessels of every shape moored along the wharf. City folk thronged the quays, gawking at unsullied and polished bronze, Tyrell envoys in green and gold, Dornish traders in linen despite chill, and harbormen offloading casks of pickled herring while singing of salt wives. The noise echoed from the white marble Merman's Hall where banners of 9 great houses fluttered together for the first time in living memory. Stark in silver gray, Targaryen three-headed dragon in red, Aaron falcon and moon, Martell sun and spear, Tyrell golden rose, Baratheon crowned stag, Greyjoy golden kraken, Tully leaping trout, Manderley merman trident. Sansa presided as steward of harbor, parchment lists pinned to wooden boards. She greeted Robb's arrival with a smile both weary and fierce. "You smell of smoke and pine sap," she teased softly, though her eyes brimmed. They embraced among wolves, Queen's Guard, and startled merchants. Tyrion Lannister prowled behind, taking notes, muttering about seat allocations, trade tariffs, and the definition of sovereign realms. Brienne stood at Sansa's shoulder, hand upon pommel, scanning new threats. Daenerys invited Robb to join her for counsel before the Dawn Accords conclave. The Merman's Hall's main chamber was flooded ankle-deep in seawater by design, so that the mosaic underfoot shimmered with dancing light like a living map. High on podium, each envoy knelt upon stone dais shaped into their house sigil. Robb's dais bore direwolf howling toward Star. Sansa perched as advisor behind him. Jon had not come. He remained at Castle Black, forging a new watch oath to welcome wildlings. Tormund, however, sat cross-legged among gallery beams, gnawing boar shank, uninterested in pomp. Tyrion called the assembly to order. He spoke of new world forged by ice and fire, of the need for laws to bind both dragons and wolves. The Dawn Accords text unrolled. A charter of realm rights, trade, war limitations, necromancy bans, dragonflight corridors, harbor toll distribution. Lords debated, voices rising, Sansa's calm tones smoothing. Lord Paxter Redwine argued for monopoly on vintage shipping. Wyman thundered about northern grain tariffs. Dornish envoys insisted on abolishing primogeniture. Daenerys listened, measuring each demand. Robb spoke sparingly, his presence a reminder of the wall's distant silhouette. After 7 days, accords sealed. The 7 kingdoms would become Confederation of Dawn, each realm sovereign in custom, bound in common defense. Council of Dawn to convene yearly at Heart's home, chaired in rotation. Dragonfire reserved for threat beyond realm or by unanimous council vote. The Night's Watch to become Wardens of Winter, sworn but free to wed. Its ranks open to Southlanders volunteering. Wildlings to settle lands gifted along Long Lake. Reparations for Reach and Westerlands to rebuild burned farms. Funded by Iron Bank loans underwritten by Dragon Queen's Myronese coffers and Stark silver. Daenerys and Robb co-signed charter. Quills dipped in ink mixed with melted ice from Wall and ash from Drogon's fire. Symbolic union of elements. When their names dried, the Merman's Hall erupted in cheers that bounced across water, startling harbor gulls into flight. That night celebrations spilled along Seawolf Square. Wine casks popped like alder cones thrown on hearth. Harpers strummed. Dornish dancers whirled beneath lantern strings. Gray wind bounded through crowd, scattering roasted chestnuts. Dragons circled above, their bellies glowing ember red in moonlight. Robb and Daenerys sat side by side on a dais of driftwood carved into entwined wolf and dragon, sharing sweet hippocras served in silvered horns. Sansa laughed with Marjorie Tyrell. Tyrion explained improbable jokes to stout Lord Wyman. Tormund attempted to teach a pair of unsullied soldiers how to belly waggle. Late, when stars crowded black sky, Robb and Daenerys slipped from revel toward the outer seawall, away from ears. Gulls nested on mooring posts, their calls hushed. Water lapped stone, gentle as cat's breath. The city behind them hummed, but here only seas whisper. Daenerys leaned on rampart, tracing splash of starlight on waves. My life has been forging thrice-burnt steel. Break chains, crush tyrants. Peace feels like walking on glass. I fear I'll break it. Robb rested forearms next to hers. I once thought honor alone could hold a realm. I learned that honor must bend to mercy and mercy to justice. We'll break some things. We'll mend others. She turned, hair shining. And you, wolf who spared Frey younglings and hung their lord? Will you bend to dragon flame if mercy fails? If flame means the innocent burn, then no. He straightened, gentle hard. But if darkness rises again, I'll ride beside you. She searched his eyes, measuring truth. Slowly she nodded, tension easing. Then let dawn find us ready. He hesitated, then drew from cloak the shard of ice from Night King. Light within glimmered faint blue. A reminder, he said, offering it. Darkness never dies, only slumbers. She accepted, cupping it in both palms. Frost crept across her gloves, yet she did not flinch. And flame, she whispered, never rests. She lifted gaze. If these opposites can coexist, perhaps we can teach realms to do the same. He saw reflection of torch in her eyes, like twin suns. Words tangled. Instead he reached, covering her hands around the shard. Their breaths mingled, mist between. Above, Drogon circled once then drifted away, leaving them to hush of waves. Years later, bards would spin that hush into kiss beneath dragonfire, forging lineages, dynasties. Some tales would claim the Wolf King bent knee, others that Dragon Queen crowned him equal. Perhaps truth lay somewhere in between. On a seawall, two weary leaders found moment of unarmored quiet and vowed not crowns but conscience. The realm thereafter was less grand than ballads. Harvests failed, lords squabbled, small folk muttered about taxes, dragons shed scales on rooftops. Yet, when the north winds howled, beacons lit along the rebuilt wall. When summer drought scorched the south, dragon carried rain barrels doused fields. And when bandits rose, wardens of winter rode beside unsullied patrols. It was not perfect. It was dawn, fragile, glowing, new. Robb returned to Winterfell each spring, Sansa guiding Confederation chambers in White Harbor until poppy flowers quilted the fields. Some springs Daenerys joined, silver hair curling beneath wolfskin cloak, Drogon preening in the godswood clearing, steam rising from pool where he drank. They sat among the weirwood roots older than time, talking of roads to rebuild, brooks to dam, songs to teach to children who had never known the long night. When the first such child was born, a daughter with eyes gray as north sky and hair pale as moon, her cry mingled wolf howl and dragon echo. They named her Lyanna Rhaenys Stark Targaryen, in memory of two women whose fates had swayed the world. On the day of her naming, the Merman's Hall rang again with horns, and the dawn accords were recited by young wardens who spoke both common and old tongue, sealing promise anew. Years stretched, dragons' wings darkened with age. The wall became lattice of crystal more than ice. Some said another darkness stirred beyond the sunset sea, or below shattered Valyria, but those omens belonged to another generation. For Robb Stark and Daenerys, for Jon and Sansa and Arya and all who bled and built, the day had come when the lone wolf did not die, and the dragon did not rage, but both rested in quiet watchfulness. And in the still hours before sunrise, if one paused beneath the arch of Winterfell's great hall, they might hear faint notes of wind chimes carved from shards of Night King's ice, hanging in window where dawn spilled. Those chimes sang in minor key, reminder of cold that had once tried to swallow the world, and their song lingered beneath the laughter of children who chased direwolf pups through ancient corridors, pups unafraid of shadows for the first time in living memory. The thaw crept southward by slow degrees, the sort of steady, relentless advance that no host of men could have matched with forced marches. It began as a subtle loosening of the rivers near Queen's Crown, dark water threading once frozen beds, then spread in widening veins across the plains between the wall and the dismal ponds of the neck. In the mornings wagon wheels bit into mud rather than ice. At night the frost returned, but meekly, as if it were a watchman reluctant to resume an old post. By the time Robb Stark and his retinue crossed the last river, the air tasted less of iron and more of peat and meltwater. Northmen had stripped the King's Road clean of rotted corpses, though the stains of battle still freckled every milestone. They passed cairns built from river-rounded stones, each crowned with a little silver weirwood leaf carved by watchful hands, memorials for the unknown dead. Wildlings rode beside sworn knights. A pair of then giants hauled the siege wagons like docile oxen, humming deep, rhythmic songs that none but they could comprehend. Above, regal, Daenerys's green dragon glided semicircles along the clouds, his wings stirring vortices in lingering snow squalls. Some men swore they could feel those wing beats thrumming in their ribs. Robb rode at the column's point, cloak thrown back so the sun, thin though it was, could warm the scars on his brow. Lady Meage Mormont flanked him, visor up, gray-streaked hair snapping behind helm. Before them trotted Grey Wind with mouth parted in easy panting. Behind, the banners of Manderley, Umber, Karstark and Tully rippled in ranks like stitched waves. Southward they carried the Dawn Accords for high justice at Winterfell and White Harbor both. A twin ratification to bind Dragon and Direwolf in law as surely as they had been bound in battle. Tormund Giantsbane had not stopped boasting since they set out. "We broke the long night with a single charge," he told the cookfires, fists gesturing until his beard bristled. "Some big folk will write their fancy scribbles about kings and queens, but remember, giants at the front and wildlings behind, that's what cracked the first skull." The thens rumbled appreciative thunder while Manderley's pretended to scowl. Robb let him talk. Each embellished deed seemed to patch another wound in the wildling's memory of slaughtered sons. Gendry traveled close, hammer slung at hip, bronzed shoulders still raw from forge heat after patching Mormont mail. Robb had come to rely on his blacksmith counsel when dragonglass chipped or hinges froze. At dusk one night they found the young man standing near a half-collapsed windmill, gazing west where torchlight shimmered across the trackless fields. "Thinking of Storm's End?" Robb asked. Gendry shook his head. "Thinking of the girl with fire in her eyes. I saw Arya put 2 whites down quick as breath. Hard to forget that." He grinned, but there was weight in it. Robb clapped him once on the shoulder. "She'll be at Winterfell before us. Tell her yourself, if you can catch her." They approached the ruin of Moat Cailin under a sky swept clear by north winds. A palisade of freshly felled pines ringed the granite towers, their old, tumbled stones now mortared together into blocky ramparts. Stark sentries in leather coats saluted. Their commander, Ser Jorah Mormont, bowed long from saddle. "Riders from Winterfell," he said. "Brought letter 2 nights ago. Your lady sister has already raised wooden dais in the Godswood for council. She bids you haste." Robb thanked him and pressed on, crossing those boggy causeways where, once, Ironborn had died in droves. The neck felt quieter now. Crannogmen emerged on reed boats waving spears tipped in glass, but they dipped heads respectfully and melted back into the mist. 3 days south of the moat, they met the scouts Sansa had promised. A dozen fast rangers in snow-flecked cloaks, led by an older woman clad all in gray, her direwolf brooch battered from years of wear. She introduced herself as Lady Barbary Dustin, once an enemy, now sworn to the Dawn Accords. "Your sisters steadied the reeds, the Dustins, even little House Hornwood," she said, her eyes sharp as flint. "We ride escort." With their numbers doubled, the host quickened pace. The mud ruts began to show green shoots along their margins, and skylarks flitted overhead. Spring lay coiled in hiding, ready to pounce. When the first banners of Winterfell came into view, sable field, gray wolf rampant, cheers leapt from thousands of throats. The ancient castle still bore scorched scars along its southern wall, but new timber scaffolds hugged those stones, and lofted hay-thatched shadows showed where fresh roofs had been raised. A banner larger than any other snapped from the broken southern gatehouse, the dire wolf intertwined with the 3-headed dragon on divided field, silver and red crossing like 2 halves of dawn. They crossed the moat on a hastily rebuilt drawbridge, stone churned to slurry by thaw but reinforced with pine rafters. Horns sounded from ramparts. Steady, measured, the old Stark cadence. Sansa waited just beyond the gate, flanked by Ser Brienne and a knot of stewards in charcoal cloaks. Behind her, Arya perched atop the dwarf tower's ridge tile, loose tunic fluttering in gusts. She sprang lightly to ground just as Robb reined in. Eyes the same gray as his met Robb's with a sparkle. "Took you long enough," she said. Then she hugged him hard. The court stewards politely turned away from such display, but no one in the courtyard missed the wet sheen in her eyes when she added, "I wanted you to see Winterfell with sunrise instead of fire this time." That night Winterfell's shaky hall woke to life unknown since Robert's tourney feast. The rebuilt rafters hummed with song, part northern fiddle, part Dornish drums. The lords who gathered were a strange tapestry, Ryan Greyjoy representing the Iron Isles under truce parchment sealed in oily wax. Daisy Mormont, newly heir after Meage's wounds at the trench line. Willis Tyrell wearing single sling on left arm. Even a slender maester from Dorne's Shadow City, bearing scrolls about irrigation craft. At the high table, Robb sat between Sansa and Daenerys. The Dragon Queen had arrived earlier that day, Drogon's bulk making the east gate sag. She wore a simple velvet gown dyed deep blue, no crown still. Her rings were new, though, obsidian, gold and silver in intertwined coils. Grey Wind lay at her feet, half asleep, snout twitching each time a roasted boar spit popped. Tyrion raised a goblet, clearing throat. "My lords and ladies," he began. "If any here believe themselves prophets of doom, speak now or please, I beg you, forever hold your peace. I have survived 2 sacks of King's Landing, a trial by combat against a giant, and last week I flew on the back of a dragon, albeit for 3 terrified heartbeats. I should like a year, maybe 2, without calamity." Laughter rippled, but he straightened. "Tonight we sign the dawn accords under northern roof. In the morning we start the duller war, the one waged with quills. May our quills prove kinder than our swords." Sansa stood then. "We open Winterfell's library to every maester in the Confederation. We open its granaries to any child who fears hunger. A queen once burned our fields and a king once broke our bones. But tonight I see old foes sharing bread, and that shows me the future is not fixed. It is forged." They drank, and music surged. A harp echoing, a drum thumping slow as heart. Later Robb slipped into the God's Wood alone to clear his thoughts. The pool still mirrored the moon amidst patches of thin ice. He knelt beneath the white tree, bleeding sap like red tears. Voices drifted faint from hall, but here only rustle of needles stirred the hush. A footstep crunching left him half-turning. Daenerys approached, cloak gathered tight. Moonlight silvered her face. They stood beneath the heart tree together, neither speaking at first. Eventually she rested fingers on a low branch. "In the free cities," she said, "there are gods that take the shape of all forms, beast, man, fish. None bleed like trees. Here they say the old gods live in the wood. They see through the eyes of ravens. Maybe through dragons too." She smiled softly. "Then they saw you break chains of winter." She studied his scars. "What do those gods demand in payment?" "Stewardship," Robb answered after a thought. "Watchfulness. And humility, I suspect." He inhaled the sharp tang of weirwood sap. "I am not certain I can pay all that." He glanced at her. "Not alone." She let silence settle like snowfall. Grey Wind patted in from gloom, nuzzling Daenerys's hand before lying at their feet. She scratched his ears. "When I was alone, I birthed fire and blood. But with companions I birthed peace, small though it is. Perhaps God's favor packs." Her voice dropped. "Would your people accept a dragon at their hearth?" "They already have," Robb said. He gestured towards hall where laughter rang. "A queen can dine at Winterfell whenever the spirit moves her." She bit her lip, thinking. "Then let us try being guests of each other, Wolf. You at Dragonstone next spring. I hear each first frost." He held out hand. She clasped it, palms warm despite night. The ratification ceremony convened at dawn. Inside the old great hall, benches flanked a massive oak table newly planed by Winterfell's carpenters. The dawn accords lay unfurled on its surface, a mosaic of signatures already pinned from White Harbor's meeting, spaces left for fresh ink. Stark, Targaryen, Greyjoy, Baratheon, Martell, Tyrell. In solemn row they stepped forward. Lord Ryan Greyjoy's hand shook, but he signed, tentative promise of Iron Island's salt fleet to ferry grain north should future winters prove harsh. Willis Tyrell signed next, pledging roses to rebuild Riverland orchards. The Dorne Maester affixed the sun and spear, vowing south grain routes remain open. When Robb's quill touched parchment, he heard caw of raven on window ledge, a coal-feathered watcher like the old gods acknowledging. He wrote boldly, "Robb Stark, King in the North, Warden of the Dawn." Daenerys followed. Her script curved dragon-like. Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, Queen of Dragons, Flame of the Dawn. As she lifted quill, the wax seals were snuffed out and fresh candles lit. The acts were done. Cheers erupted. Tyrion exhaled as if he had been holding breath since the wall. But such celebrations were cut short by a garnet-armored rider bursting through the gate. Sleet clung to his braid. His face bore ragged gash. He knelt before dais, handing parchment. Sansa broke seal and read silently, color draining. She passed note to Robb. Net. Sails black as midnight anchor off Skagos. Ironborn renegades, banners of Crow's Eye. Speak of dragon horn stolen from Valyria, sirens at dusk. We rally North clans but fear dark sorcery. Send aid. Lady Asha Greyjoy. The hall fell hushed. Robb looked at Daenerys, whose brow furrowed. Euron, she whispered. He survived. Tyrion's eyes widened. A Valyrian dragon horn, if it is true, could command even dragons. Daenerys's hand found Robb's. Then dragons answer wolf first. He turned to gathered lords. The dawn has begun, but shadows linger. Who stands? Greatjon slammed fist on table. We just got home. Yet he grinned savage. I stand. Willis Tyrell stepped forward. Sling discarded. The Reach owes debt for winter grain. We stand. Ryan Greyjoy swallowed, then raised voice. That piece of dung shames the Iron Islands. We sail against him. Tormund slapped his hammer on floor. Giants march too. Sansa nodded to Brienne, who responded, The Regent's guard stands. Amid roaring acclamation, Robb addressed Daenerys. I said a queen may dine here when spirit moves her, yet feast may wait. Wolves and dragons ride once more. Her eyes flamed. Dawn is fragile, but we will not let crows steal its light. Within 2 days, Winterfell's yards rang with iron again. Smiths reforging chain nets laced with dragonglass, carpenters truing the keels of pine-hulled longboats for land transport to White Harbor's slips. Dragons hunted goats along foothills, their roars rattling new-laid mortar. Jon Snow arrived astride a shaggy garron, bearing news. The Watch could spare 200 rangers to sail as marines under Greyjoy banners. Melisandre was not with him. Rumor said she had walked south alone, following secret flames. But Jon carried her ruby, pulsing faint when drawn near the dragon shard. The War Council plotted. Reports placed Euron's fleet, those loyal to him, lurking about Skagos, plundering seal towns, forcing thralls to fell trees for hidden shipyards. At night, watchers saw pale lights flicker above basalt cliffs, heard horns of bone wailing across black water. Some claimed sea dragons answered. Asha's ravens warned of priest-sorcerers weaving glamours around monstrous horn etched in glyphs. Their plan took shape, a 3-pronged assault. Grey wind would lead land force across sea ice straits once flows thinned. Dragons would strafe shipyards from sky. Ironborn loyalists under Ryan would nose longships into coves at high tide, securing beachheads. On shore, Northmen and free folk archers would burn caches and chains. But war begins before swords cross. Letters flew. Sansa dispatched maesters to Dreadfort, Deepwood Motte, even distant Bear Island, commanding every able axeman muster at Carhold. Tyrion wrote urgent dispatch to Volantis merchants. Deny Euron harbor rights lest the Dawn accord levy tariffs. Dornish envoys lured Euron's corsair partners away by promising spice trade shares. Robb visited Winterfell's crypts the night before departure, torch in fist. He knelt before Ned Stark's statue, his father's likeness weathered by fire and time. Shadows flickered upon sculpted beard. I do not know if I have honored your sense of justice, he murmured, but I have tried to temper justice with mercy. And I will keep dawn bright. He felt cool weight of ring Sansa had given him wolf-biting tail. He straightened, resolved. Daenerys stood waiting beyond vault doors. She wore scaled armor again, dragon's teeth motif at collar. Your father would approve, she said quietly. Robb came alongside. Will your dragons fear the horn? He asked. Her jaw set. They fear nothing, but I feel their growing unease. Some power calls them beyond the horizon. She looked to him. We end that. They walked silent back to courtyard where dawn painted the sky rose and silver. Soldiers mustered. Giants knelt so saddle thongs could be cinched. Dragons beat wings above turrets, sending ravens wheeling. In that dawn breath, Robb saw all they'd fought for, balancing again upon a blade. He mounted his great gray destrier, gray wind pacing. Daenerys climbed Drogon's neck. As horns sounded, they shared nod. Pact renewed. Drogon launched skyward, wings drumming. Robb's cavalry trotted, then thundered through gate. Longship's masts moved upon river like a forest marching. Behind them Winterfell's rebuilt banners streamed, intertwined wolf and dragon shining against new sun. And thus the fragile morning of the dawn accord set upon its first test. Hopes riding steel keels, dragons chasing echoes of cursed horns, wolves remembering snow trails. Whether spring would bloom complete, only the gods of wood and flame could know. But no matter the storm to come, the pack was no longer scattered. It rode together, direwolf and dragon, blood and breath braided like dawn's first gold across expanse of a world determined at last to survive itself.